Chapter 204. After placing the restriction, Wang Lin ignored the woman. He waved his sleeves and split the cave into two, separating it from the woman's room. There was a restriction in between. Wang Lin sat cross-legged in the cave and formed a seal with his right hand. He pointed between his eyebrows and a shadow shot out. This shadow was only the size of a palm, and it was blurry, but one could vaguely make out the shape of a beast. This shadow was the second demon that Wang Lin had obtained from the land of the ancient god. After the second demon appeared, it quietly floated in the air and waited for Wang Lin's orders. After forming the soul core, the last bit of rebellious intent in the demon's heart disappeared. Wang Lin pointed with his right hand, and the demon's shadow gradually faded until it completely disappeared. However, Wang Lin used his divine sense to check, and he could clearly sense where the demon was. He sent out a thought, and the second demon left the stone room. It came to Yin Fei's room and quietly landed on her hair. The woman didn't notice anything during this process. After doing all of this, Wang Lin no longer paid attention to the woman. He took a deep breath and recalled everything that had happened in the land of the ancient god in the past 200 years. During this period of time, he had almost lost his life many times. Now that he thought about it, it was like a dream, and he couldn't tell if it was real or not. After a long time, Wang Lin let out a sigh. Although he had obtained the inheritance of the ancient god's knowledge, compared to the real inheritance, it was only a small part. The other part was the inheritance of the ancient god's power. The master of the Blood Sea in the land of the ancient god would definitely not give up. Once he found a way to leave the land of the ancient god, the first person he would look for would be Wang Lin, who had obtained the inheritance of the ancient god's knowledge. And without the advantages that he had obtained from the inheritance of the ancient god's memories, if he met the red-haired man, Wang Lin would have no chance of surviving. This matter was like a huge mountain pressing down on his heart. However, according to Wang Lin's analysis, it wouldn't be easy for the red-haired man to leave the land of the auspicious god. In this way, he wouldn't be in danger from the Blood Sea Master for a short period of time. Even so, there were some necessary preparations that needed to be carried out as soon as possible. Wang Lin had already made up his mind. After reorganizing everything in Qilin City, he asked Yin Fei to take him to find some ancient transfer arrays in the Sea of Devils. He had more than 20 supreme-grade spirit stones in his pocket, which were more than enough for him to activate the teleportation portal and go anywhere. However, before that, he still had to carefully study the G teleportation formation. If he did not understand this formation, then even if he found the formation, he would not rashly activate it. This was actually one of the reasons why he came to Qilin City. In addition to this, his cultivation level had reached the late stage of core formation. However, reaching the nascent soul stage was like a gorge that was difficult to cross. No matter how hard he tried, he was still a bit behind. Wang Lin didn't know if it was this difficult for other people to reach the nascent soul stage, but for him, it was several times more difficult than he had imagined. Whether it was the dragon marrow or the pills that could increase his chances of reaching the nascent soul stage, he had consumed them all, but he still couldn't reach the nascent soul stage. There wasn't even a trace of it. Wang Lin had also analyzed whether or not all of this had something to do with his G realm. However, when his G realm entered his divine sense, he gained a sliver of understanding about the G realm. He only knew that in this strange state, the late stage of nascent soul was the end. After that, the G realm cultivators had the power of the heavens. In fact, he did not have a systematic understanding of the G realm. This time, coming to Qilin City to find ancient records that described the G realm was also one of his missions. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. After a moment of silence, he took out a few storage bags. Other than the items from the cave and the war god temple, these were all things he obtained from the land of the ancient god. First was the G Emperor's storage bag. Wang Lin's divine sense probed it, and suddenly, a gentle force pushed out, preventing his divine sense from entering. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. He pondered for a while. Obviously, the ancient emperor was not dead. He sneered in his heart and put this storage bag together with the one from the war god temple. Then, his eyes fell on the remaining storage bags. Among them, The one that made his heart beat faster was the bag that contained Dong-mu and the other 9 people's life immortal treasures. He waved his right hand, and the items in the storage bag flew out one by one. 10 immortal treasures floated in front of him. Among them, other than a crescent-shaped black scimitar that was still glowing, the other 9 were all dim and without light. Wang Lin's divine sense suddenly moved and wrapped around the 9 treasures. But immediately, his face darkened. Even though the owners of these 9 treasures were dead and their life immortal lights were dim, there was another divine sense that prevented Wang Lin from taking them for himself. His eyes flashed, and he pondered for a while. Suddenly, he remembered that when the old man from Dong-mu's group gave him these treasures, he left a mark on each of them. Wang Lin frowned slightly. His divine sense emerged again and wrapped around the 9 treasures. He carefully observed each of them. He would spend a lot of time to carefully analyze each of them and examine the waves of divine sense. After a long time, Wang Lin stared at a palm-sized bronze mirror. His eyes suddenly lit up. Of the 9 treasures that he observed, other than this bronze mirror, the divine sense on them was not something that a core formation cultivator like him could resolve. Only the divine sense on this mirror, when the owner's divine sense was destroyed, caused a trace of divine sense to collapse. This indirectly affected the divine sense that the old man left behind. As a result, it was impossible to resolve the divine sense on this treasure. Wang Lin was silent for a while. He suddenly reached out and put away the other treasures, leaving only this mirror floating in front of him. He tried to take over it by force. Time passed quickly. 1.5 months later, Wang Lin walked out of the cave. His expression was normal and his face was calm. 30 days ago, he had already successfully resolved the divine sense on the ancient mirror and successfully imprinted his own divine sense on it. After 7 days of refining, he was able to control this treasure. Then, he continued to refine the item with his alchemic fire. After 49 days, the item was completely his. During these days, he had a slight understanding of the use of this treasure. The use of this mirror was very mysterious. It was similar to the mysterious power inside the Shattered Star's ring. They were both related to clones. He thought that this item must have been very famous in the past. Otherwise, the ancient cultivators wouldn't have used it as their life-bonded treasure. However, with Wang Lin's experience, he didn't know the name of this item. Even 2C's memories didn't have much knowledge about treasures. After all, the body of an ancient god was already the best treasure. Ancient gods didn't casually refine treasures. However, if they did, the items they refined would be extremely powerful. Even now, Wang Lin would often think about the square cauldron that 2C had thrown away. After inheriting the memories, there were dozens of methods to make treasures in Wang Lin's mind. However, all of these treasures required an unimaginable amount of materials. Even if he gathered all of the resources in the Suzaku, he still wouldn't be able to make one of them. The current him already knew the name of the square cauldron. It was called the Mysterious Star Cauldron, and its use was to seal. According to the memories, if this cauldron was used, it could seal anything in the world. Even an entire planet could be sealed by it. The materials used to make this cauldron were the least in Wang Lin's memories. However, this was only relative. In Wang Lin's eyes, it was only the difference between 50 steps and 100 steps. Aside from the bronze mirror, Wang Lin spent the rest of his time making the restriction flag using ink stones as the main material. However, he still lacked some common materials. Today, the reason Wang Lin left the cave was to walk around the city and buy the missing materials. While he was breaking the ancient mirror, the restriction in Yun Fei's body acted up several times. Each time, he had to use the second devil to break it. After a long time, Yun Fei had accepted her fate. She was even a bit numb to the restriction. In reality, Yun Fei had left the cave several times. Each time, she would go to Qilin City to find an expert to break the restriction. However, each time, she would return disappointed. None of the cultivators she found were able to break the restriction. Everyone who saw the restriction frowned. From what they could see, this restriction didn't seem like something the current cultivation world could use. This restriction was more like an ancient forbidden technique. Some people had questions about this, But forbidden techniques were unorthodox techniques in the cultivation world. Under normal circumstances, very few people would spend a lot of time and effort to study them. As a result, even though some people felt that the restriction on her body was strange, they didn't investigate too deeply. In addition, when Yun Fei found someone to break the restriction, she was very careful. She was afraid that before the restriction was broken, she would expose Wang Lin's identity and be killed by him. What Yun Fei didn't know was that everything she experienced was being seen by Wang Lin through the second devil on her head. Wang Lin sneered in his heart at this woman's actions. He thought she was courting death. This time, Wang Lin walked out of the stone room and was about to leave for the city. At this moment, the door to the cave suddenly opened and Yun Fei walked in with a frown. Wang Lin's expression slightly changed. His right hand formed a seal and his body suddenly disappeared. After the woman entered the cave, she looked at the stone room where Wang Lin used to be. Deep in her eyes, there was a flash of hatred. Wang Lin hid himself and stared at the woman. The little tricks she had been playing these past few days had aroused his killing intent. After she entered the stone room, Wang Lin's body moved and he left the cave. He jumped onto the back of the Qilin beast and entered Qilin City. The inside of Qilin City was very large, and there were all kinds of shops selling all kinds of cultivation items. As he walked through the city, Wang Lin encountered many cultivators. Their cultivation levels varied from the late stage of core formation to the second or third level of qi condensation. Wang Lin casually strolled along the way. He looked around at the shops, looking for what he needed. At the same time, his divine sense was in constant contact with the second devil. He clearly saw that after he left, Yun Fei went to a corner of the room and opened a stone slab. She took out a pill furnace from it, and then, with a hesitant look on her face, she put the pill furnace back in its original place. She sat to the side with a hesitant expression. Seeing this, Wang Lin sneered in his heart. This woman's life was in his hands, so he wasn't in a rush to kill her. He wanted to see if there was anyone in Qilin City who could break his restrictions. This would also be a way to test the power of his restrictions. With this plan in mind, he continued to sense the woman's location while looking for materials. As he was walking, Wang Lin's eyes suddenly focused on a shop to the side. This shop was about 5 floors high and was covered in carvings of dragons and phoenixes. On top of the shop, there was a giant white jade sign. On the sign were the words, Treasure Refining Pavilion. Looking at the pavilion, Wang Lin let out a strange smile. He clearly remembered back in Nando City, when he entered the Treasure Refining Pavilion to exchange for a pill furnace with the skin of a dragon. He was spied on and chased for thousands of miles. This caused a bloody storm in the outer region of the Sea of Devils. The pill furnace that caused all of this was given to Li Muan. Thinking about this, the image of a weak woman appeared in Wang Lin's mind. He let out a sigh. Li Muan was interested in him. This was something that Wang Lin could see. However, he had a blood feud with her. In this cruel cultivation world, he couldn't have any worries. Otherwise, if he caused trouble again, this woman would definitely be implicated. After experiencing this kind of thing once, Wang Lin's heart became cold. He wouldn't allow something like this to happen again before he was powerless to protect his loved ones. Also, 200 years had passed in a flash. Whether or not Li Muan was still alive was another matter. The image of Li Muan was forcibly removed from his mind. Wang Lin's eyes became cold again. He raised his foot and walked into the Treasure Refining Pavilion. Compared to the Treasure Refining Pavilion in Nando City, there was no difference. The only difference was that there was one more floor. After Wang Lin walked in, he casually looked around and walked up to the second floor. The moment he entered, Wang Lin suddenly stopped and looked at the left wall of the second floor. There was a huge flood dragon skin hanging on it. It was a complete flood dragon skin, and at first glance, it looked as lifelike as a living flood dragon. On the second floor of the Treasure Refining Pavilion sat a girl wearing blue silk. She was eating melon seeds. When she saw Wang Lin staring at the dragon skin on the wall, she used the special technique of the treasure refining sect to look at Wang Lin. She guessed that Wang Lin was at the late stage of core formation. With a clear voice, she said, "This dragon skin is the most complete one in the treasure refining sect." It is not for sale unless you have something of the same value. This dragon skin was very familiar to Wang Lin, especially the way it was sewn together. It was very similar to the one he used to exchange for a pill furnace. Wang Lin pondered a bit and asked, "Pardon me for asking, but where did you get this from?" If Wang Lin had asked this when he was at the early stage of core formation, he wouldn't have gotten an answer. However, he was now at the peak of the late stage of core formation. From the girl's point of view, his cultivation was enough for her to answer. She chuckled and said, "Senior is not the first person to ask where this came from. After all, it is very difficult to obtain a complete dragon skin. Also, this skin was clearly taken off not long after the dragon died." Wang Lin nodded. His gaze moved away from the dragon skin and landed on the girl. The girl put down the melon seeds in her hand and smiled. To be honest, Junior doesn't know who obtained this. 200 years ago, this item was exchanged for a pill furnace at the outer edge of the Sea of Devils in Indo City. The cultivator who obtained this dragon skin was quite famous in the outer edge of the Sea of Devils 200 years ago. After that person left the treasure refining pavilion, he was chased by several core formation cultivators. One of them was even at the mid-stage of core formation. At that time, he was only at the peak of the late stage of foundation establishment. Originally, there shouldn't have been any suspense in this matter. That person was certain to die, but reality was different. Under the pursuit of those core formation cultivators, that person unexpectedly broke through the foundation establishment stage and reached the core formation stage. Afterwards, he inconceivably slaughtered all of his pursuers and even forced that mid-core formation cultivator to use the 10,000 Demons 100 Days execution order. Wang Lin calmly listened to all of this. His expression didn't change at all. After the girl finished speaking, he only nodded and no longer asked about this matter. After walking around the treasure refining pavilion, Wang Lin spent 30 mid-quality spirit stones to buy some materials. He also spent some spirit stones to buy a piece of jade that contained information about an ancient transfer array. Then, he left without looking back. The dragon skin was still quietly sitting on the wall of the second floor. In terms of materials, Wang Lin was very satisfied. He had gathered all of the materials needed to make the restriction flag. In fact, aside from the ink stone, the other materials were very common and easy to buy. Aside from the materials, Wang Lin frowned about the jade about the transfer array. Even in the treasure refining pavilion, there wasn't much information about ancient transfer arrays. This jade only contained some scattered information. As for the jade about the G realm, it wasn't convenient for Wang Lin to directly ask about it. Instead, he probed it from the side, but in the end, he didn't find anything. After returning to the cave, Yun Fei was still in the stone room. Wang Lin took a look at her before returning to his own stone room. He sat down cross-legged and prepared to make the restriction flag. His cultivation was much higher than hers, so when he entered the cave, Yun Fei didn't notice him at all. He took out the jade that he had obtained from the second stage of the ancient god realm and carefully scanned it again. Then, he crushed the jade with his right hand. Then, he took out the ink stone and used his spiritual energy to catalyze it. Then, he took out all of the materials needed to make the restriction flag and fused them together. Then, he used the method in the jade to activate a mouthful of spiritual energy and began to refine the restriction flag. This process was described in the jade. It was called tool nurturing. It could be said that the creation of the restriction flag was very different from the Shun Hall of Battle that Wang Lin was familiar with. The two were not the same system. They were in completely different realms. The time needed to nurture the restriction flag could be long or short. It depended on the initial requirements of the restriction flag. If 999,999 restrictions were placed on the restriction flag, then it would be complete. In reality, the restriction flag was split into 4 different grades. These 4 grades were divided by the number of restrictions placed on them. They were 999, 9999, 99,999, 99,999, and the final grade was 999,999. Wang Lin's first target was the 999 restrictions. Late that night, Wang Lin was sitting cross-legged in his room. His hands were constantly moving in front of him. In front of him was a small white flag. There were 81 black spots on the flag. Wang Lin's expression was serious. His hands formed a few hand seals before suddenly pointing at the flag. Suddenly, a series of afterimages appeared from his hands and formed a circle of restrictions that landed on the white flag. The moment the restriction landed on the flag, it immediately collapsed and dissipated. Finally, it turned into a black dot on the flag. At this moment, there were a total of 12 black dots on the flag. Once the number of black dots reached 999, the lowest grade restriction flag would be considered a success. During this process, Wang Lin was very careful. In the middle of the night, he had placed dozens of restrictions, but not all of them were successfully placed on the flag. After many attempts, Wang Lin found that the restriction flag could only absorb the same restrictions 9 times. Once the 10th restriction appeared, the previous 9 would also disappear. After resting for a bit, Wang Lin was about to place the 10th restriction on the sure sand when he suddenly raised his head and stared at the stone room where Yunfei was. His eyes revealed a hint of coldness. Through the second devil, he could clearly see that Yunfei was inside the room. She opened the stone and took out the pill furnace. This pill furnace looked very old, and there was a piece of yellow paper that emitted a faint glow on it. The woman once again revealed a hesitant expression, but she quickly clenched her teeth. She didn't put the pill furnace in her bag of holding. Instead, she placed it in her bosom and quietly walked out of the room. When she arrived outside the stone room where Wang Lin was, she turned her head. Her eyes revealed a look of hatred, but it was quickly covered up. The woman stood outside Wang Lin's stone room and respectfully called out, "Senior, are you there?" After she finished speaking, she didn't move and quietly waited. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the woman respectfully said, "Senior, Junior has to go out for a while. I hope Senior will allow me." After the woman finished speaking, she slowly retreated. Her steps weren't fast. She retreated all the way to the door of the cave, but there was still no movement from Wang Lin's stone room. The woman's eyes lit up. She gently patted the wall of the cave with her right hand and left the cave. During the month that Wang Lin was in closed-door cultivation, every time this woman went out, she would do something like this. Wang Lin had a cold smile on his face. After she left the cave, he stood up and followed her out. This woman took the pill furnace out tonight, so something must have happened. In addition, Wang Lin was a bit curious about the pill furnace. It has to be said that when he first entered the cave, he carefully scanned the area with his divine sense and didn't find anything strange. It was clear that the pill furnace had some kind of technique that could hide it from divine sense. At the same time, Wang Lin was a bit curious about why the woman didn't put in her bag of holding. The 6,000-word update was completed. If there were no accidents, from today onwards, there would be 6,000 plus words every day. Now, I'm begging for monthly votes. If you don't have monthly votes, then vote for recommendations. I'm in desperate need of these 2 kinds of votes. Chapter 205. There was no moonlight in the Sea of Devils, only the moonlight that shined through the thick fog. However, for cultivators, these specks of moonlight were enough to illuminate their vision. After Yunfei left the cave, she sped towards the city gate of the mountain range outside of Qilin City. When she passed the city gate, her figure paused for a moment. Then, a person walked out of the city gate. This person was dressed in black and had a robe on his head. His entire body was almost wrapped in clothes. The person in black looked at Yunfei but didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out of the city. Yunfei hesitated for a bit, but she quickly clenched her teeth and followed. The 2 of them smoothly passed through the city gate. No guard from Qilin City came to stop them. Wang Lin saw all of this through the second devil and sneered in his heart. His body was like a ghost as he slowly followed. Through the second devil, Wang Lin was able to see that the person in black was only at the mid-stage of core formation. If Wang Lin wanted to kill him, all he needed to do was use his divine sense to destroy him. However, Yunfei's actions tonight were very secretive. Wang Lin wanted to see who Yunfei had found to break his restriction. After the black-clothed man and Yunfei exited the mountain city gate, they headed east at a high speed. 3,000 miles away from Qilin City, Under a mountain shrouded in black fog, the two of them stopped. Ancestor, disciple has brought the person. The person in black knelt on one knee and placed his hands on his chest. He formed a lotus-shaped seal and revealed a respectful expression. You can go back. A voice slowly rang out from the mountain peak that was shrouded in black fog. This voice was like thunder as it spread out. The black fog in the surroundings involuntarily turned into layers of ripples that scattered in all directions. A small pavilion was revealed at the top of the mountain. The person in black lowered his head and stood up. He didn't even look back as he quickly left. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. At this moment, Wang Lin was standing on a cliff 500 kilometers away. After he noticed the person in black leave, he pointed at his brow and the devil Su Ligua appeared. After Su Ligua appeared, it was clear that he had received Wang Lin's order. He let out a mischievous laugh and quickly left. His direction was the path the person in black had to take. As for Yunfei, she was standing outside the black fog. She felt very uneasy and couldn't help but hesitate. In truth, she didn't participate in all of this tonight. While Wang Lin was in closed-door training, Yunfei secretly found a few cultivators to remove the restriction on him, but none of them succeeded. She had already accepted her fate, but she didn't expect that a mid-stage core formation guard from Qilin City would find her and tell her to go to a place where there would be someone who could remove the restriction on her. However, she would have to pay a price. As a result, Yunfei couldn't help but hesitate. In her opinion, to be able to order a mid-stage core formation cultivator to do something for him, this person's cultivation level must not be weak. However, whether or not this person could actually remove the restriction was another matter. After all, in her opinion, Wang Lin's cultivation level had reached an unbelievable level. Just as she was hesitating on the second day, which was this morning, the mid-stage core formation cultivator came to find her and gave her a piece of jade. Inside the jade was a detailed record of the signs before and after the restriction activated. This shocked her greatly. It has to be said that even when she was in Qilin City looking for someone to remove the restriction, she only briefly mentioned the signs and didn't discuss them in detail. Therefore, it could be said that other than the person who used the restriction, she was the only one who understood the changes of the restriction. The moment she saw the jade, Yunfei's hesitant heart became firm. She decided to take the risk. That was how the scene tonight came to be. Currently, Yunfei raised her head to look at the little pavilion at the top of the mountain. She could see that inside the little pavilion sat a person. Because of the fog, her vision was blocked, so she couldn't see the person's face. "Senior, can you really remove the restriction inside Junior's body?" Yunfei bit her lower lip and softly asked. "Come up and talk." The person's voice carried an irresistible majesty. The moment he spoke, the surrounding black fog began to churn and turn into black fog dragons. They roared and intertwined with each other, forming a long dragon's path. The dragon's head was at the little pavilion and the dragon's tail was under the woman's feet. Yunfei suppressed the anxiety in her heart as she stepped onto the fog dragon and slowly walked up. Soon, she arrived at the pavilion at the top of the mountain. The moment she walked up, she could clearly see the person inside the pavilion. This person was middle-aged and had a dignified appearance. He had the air of someone from a great family. He wore a brocade robe, and his eyes were filled with wisdom. The moment he saw Yunfei, his eyes shone brightly. So it really is an ancient restriction. The person thought to himself, but on the surface, he didn't reveal anything. He calmly said, "I can help you remove the restriction, but you have to tell me who placed this restriction on you." Yunfei hesitated a little and whispered, "Senior, Junior can't say that. How about this? Junior will give you a batch of pills in exchange for helping you remove the restriction." The middle-aged man pondered a little, shook his head, and said, "If you don't tell me, then I won't help you remove the restriction. Also, I can tell you that not many people in the Sea of Devils can remove this restriction. Think about it yourself." Yunfei's face darkened. After a long time, she clenched her teeth and said, "Fine, I ask Senior to remove it first. If Junior succeeds, Junior will tell you everything." The middle-aged man let out a laugh, stood up, and waved his hand. A purple stone suddenly appeared in his hand. This stone was round and very smooth. After he took out the stone, he immediately formed a few seals on it and the stone began to shine. Shortly after, a ray of red light shot out from the stone and landed between Yunfei's eyebrows. Yunfei's body suddenly trembled. She could feel that the moment the red light entered her body, it split into countless threads and began to move around inside her body. At this moment, the middle-aged man's expression was very serious as he stared at Yunfei and carefully observed her. Not long after, a faint symbol slowly appeared between Yunfei's eyebrows. This symbol was filled with an ancient aura. The moment the middle-aged man saw this symbol, his face revealed a look of ecstasy. He muttered to himself, "It really is an ancient restriction. I didn't think that someone would actually know this kind of restriction." His eyes flashed. He bit the tip of his right hand and squeezed out a drop of blood. He dripped it onto the stone, and immediately the stone shone brightly. This time, a black and a white beam of light shot out from it, aiming straight for the symbol between Yunfei's eyebrows. But just at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A shadow suddenly appeared on Yunfei's hair. This shadow revealed a beast head that suddenly blocked the space between Yunfei's eyebrows. The beast opened its mouth and swallowed the black and white pillars of light. Then, the shadow transformed into a small beast and suddenly sucked in Yunfei's breath. Yunfei's eyes suddenly bulged and instantly became bloodshot. Her divine sense involuntarily left her body and was sucked into the small beast's mouth. All of this happened too quickly. In the blink of an eye, Yunfei had already perished, and her divine sense had been destroyed by the incense. In fact, the moment she walked onto the dragon path, her fate was already determined. If she had listened to Wang Lin and waited for him to leave the Sea of Devils, she might have had a chance to live. At the same time, the small beast body suddenly swelled up and wrapped around Yunfei's body. A bag of holding, a pill furnace, and a golden core all flew out of Yunfei's body. The small beast picked them up and was about to fly off into the distance. When the middle-aged man first saw this beast, his expression couldn't help but change. He really couldn't tell what this beast was. It had such a strange ability that it could absorb divine sense. He had some speculations in his heart. Was this beast hiding here, or did it have an owner? The middle-aged man was very suspicious about this. However, he quickly returned to normal. Seeing that the beast was about to leave, his eyes glowed coldly, and he waved his hands, causing the black mist to once again form into mist dragons that surrounded the beast. Shortly after, he slapped his bag of holding and took out a small drum made from the hide of an unknown beast. He stared at the small beast and gently flicked the drum. With a dong sound, the surrounding black fog began to rumble and turned into black armored demonic soldiers holding various treasures. They charged at the small beast. The fog dragons were in front and the demonic soldiers were in the back, surrounding the second devil. During this time, colorful lights from various treasures rained down on the second devil. However, this little beast was Wang Lin's second devil. Although it wasn't very powerful, its ferocity was unimaginable. Even when Wang Lin tamed it, he almost suffered a backlash from it. So, it was easy to see how ferocious it was. Without any hesitation, the devil took a deep breath and Yunfei's golden core doubled in size. Then its body suddenly turned from 1 to 10, then from 10 to 100. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of small beasts appeared in the middle of the encirclement. At the same time, the 100 little beasts all let out sharp cries at the same time. The sound waves were like raging waves, crazily spreading in all directions. Immediately after, the 100 little beasts all fiercely flapped their wings and intertwined with each other, forming a hurricane. With a huge force, they suddenly charged in one direction. The sound wave opened up a path, and the hurricane followed. As a result, the mist dragons were the first to be affected. Under the impact of the sound wave, the mist dragons collapsed one by one. Even the demon soldiers could not help but pause for a moment. Next, it was the hurricane. Then, the mist dragons that had already collapsed dissipated under the mighty gust of wind and were sucked into the hurricane whirlpool. The middle-aged man's eyes revealed a strange light as he stared at the tornado with interest. His right hand casually flicked the drum a few more times. Dong, 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 dong. 4 sounds rang out in succession, and the entire black fog began to churn violently. It turned into many strange-looking beasts that appeared on the outskirts of the fog. These ferocious beasts all emitted a bloodthirsty and murderous aura as they stared at the whirlwind. I don't care who your master is, but none of the spirit beasts that I, Chio Siping, have set my eyes on will be able to escape. I know that you understand what I'm saying, so listen carefully. Before this, I'm only surrounding you and not attacking. However, after 3 breaths, if you don't obey me, I'll start attacking. The second devil let out a roar. Suddenly, all of the small beasts inside the tornado gathered their divine senses together and formed a bolt of lightning that flew out toward the middle-aged man. The divine sense attack turned into a bolt of lightning that cut through the black fog like a hot knife through butter. In the blink of an eye, the divine sense attack closed in on the middle-aged man. The man's expression changed, and he quickly retreated. At the same time, he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. When the divine sense attack landed on the blood, it made a sizzling sound and couldn't help but pause for a moment. At the same time, the man quickly took out a black piece of wood from his bag of holding. With a fierce expression, he shouted, "Return." In an instant, the small beast's divine sense attack involuntarily moved toward the black piece of wood. However, just as it was about to touch the wood, the second devil let out another roar. The divine sense attack suddenly split into 100 parts and quickly returned to the middle-aged man. Beads of sweat could be seen on the middle-aged man's forehead. If he had been just a little bit slower, he would have been in danger. However, his eyes revealed a trace of intense fanaticism at this moment. He licked his lips and shouted in a hoarse voice, "You actually know how to use a divine sense attack. Even if you have a master, I will definitely snatch this strange beast away." Just as he said this, he heard a cold and emotionless voice come from the horizon. "Is that so?" The moment this voice came, a series of buzzing sounds appeared. The middle-aged man suddenly raised his head and saw a giant tornado appear in the horizon. This tornado was very fast and charged toward the black fog. Just as the fierce beasts outside the black fog were about to resist, a sharp sound came from the tornado. A shockwave rose up from the tornado and blew away all the things formed by the black fog. At the same time, the second devil let out a roar as it charged out and merged with the tornado. It was clearly enraged, and after taking control of the tornado, it began to spin madly around the black mist, blowing it into pieces. The middle-aged man didn't even look at the tornado. He stared at the horizon with a cautious expression. He saw a white-haired man wearing black slowly walking over from the horizon. This person's pace looked slow, but in reality, he was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he arrived at the top of the mountain. The middle-aged man, Chio Siping's pupils suddenly shrank. He hit the drum with his right hand, and the black fog that had been blown away immediately condensed into 8 balls of black fog that floated around his body. Chio Siping's eyes lit up, and he calmly said, "I presume you're the person who specializes in ancient restrictions?" This white-haired man was Wang Lin. He waved his right hand, and 2 items flew out from the tornado. They were a bag of holding and a pill furnace. After Wang Lin received them, he didn't check them. Instead, he put them in his robe and looked at the middle-aged man. From what Wang Lin could see, this middle-aged man's cultivation had reached the peak of the late stage of core formation. He was only a hair away from the nascent soul stage. However, as long as he wasn't a nascent soul cultivator, it would be very easy for Wang Lin to kill him. His eyes were cold and he said, "I'm the master of this beast. Didn't you want to steal it before? Come and steal it. I'll give you a chance." Wang Lin waved his right hand, and the second devil flew out from the tornado. It floated motionlessly in front of the middle-aged man. Chio Siping frowned. He could see that this person's cultivation level was similar to his. They were both of the late stage of core formation. However, this person's attitude was very arrogant. Chio Siping was a cautious person. At this moment, his eyes flashed as he looked at the small beast before him. Then, he revealed a smile and shook his head. "I've made a fool of myself. I was only joking before. Since this beast belongs to you, how could I dare to take it from you? I hope you don't mind all the previous misunderstandings." Wang Lin's eyes were calm. He waved his right hand, and the second devil flew back. At the same time, his eyes flashed red. His G-realm suddenly moved and turned into a ray of red lightning that poured out. Suddenly, a powerful divine sense pressure appeared in the world. Qiu Siping was about to speak, but when he saw the red light in Wang Lin's eyes, his face darkened. He didn't think that this person would not wait for him to finish speaking and instead attack to kill him. Qiu Siping was a bit angry. This person was the same as him, late-stage core formation. Even if you have a treasure, do you think I, Qiu Siping, don't have one? He snorted and quickly retreated. He waved his right hand, and the 8 balls of mist around him turned into a thick fog. Qiu Siping's eyes flashed coldly. He made up his mind. Since this person didn't want to hear him finish speaking, then he would capture him first and talk later. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, he heard the sound of a cold wind coming from Wang Lin. It was as if it came from the underworld. Destroy. Wang Lin's G-realm was as fast as lightning and immediately sank into the black fog. How could this fog compare to the G-realm? It immediately collapsed and disappeared. After a series of explosions, the 8 balls of mist that blocked Qiu Siping's G-realm all collapsed. Qiu Siping's expression finally changed. As he retreated, he didn't hesitate to form hand seals. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood in an attempt to stop the red lightning. However, the moment the blood appeared, it immediately evaporated and turned into a bloody fog. It didn't even have the effect of stopping it for a second. The shadow of death that hadn't appeared in a long time suddenly shrouded Qiu Siping's heart like a dark cloud. Without another word, he quickly took out the black piece of wood from before. The moment he took it out, Wang Lin's G-realm had already arrived and hit the wood. The black piece of wood immediately let out a series of cracking sounds. With a bang, it turned into dust. A red light flashed and sank into Qiu Siping's body. Qiu Siping's body shook and his eyes immediately became unfocused. However, after spitting out a large mouthful of blood, his originally unfocused eyes became clear again. However, within this clarity, there was a strong sense of fear. Without saying another word, he immediately retreated backward as fast as he could. Wang Lin was surprised. This person didn't die under the attack of the G-realm. This surprised him a bit. It has to be said that a similar thing had happened to his G-realm before. It was in the outer region of the Sea of Devils when a guy named Shang Guanma used a mysterious jade to escape. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He moved forward like lightning and instantly caught up to Qiu Siping. Qiu Siping was terrified. He bitterly smiled and said, "Fellow cultivator, there is no deep hatred between us. Why do you have to kill me?" At this moment, his heart was filled with regret. If he thought about it for a bit, he could tell that someone who could use the Shang G-realm restriction was not someone to be trifled with. Although this person was at the late stage of core formation, this G-realm restriction was something that even he couldn't defend against. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a treasure to protect himself, he would have already died. In his eyes, although this person wasn't at the nascent soul stage, he had the power of a nascent soul cultivator. How could he block this? How could he not run? However, in his opinion, the other party must have a very powerful magic treasure, which was why it had such an offensive power. Wang Lin's expression was cold. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes as he calmly said, "You sent people to summon the woman named Mo several times. Wasn't your goal to find the person who used the Shang G-realm restriction? Why are you running now that you've seen him?" Qiu Siping bitterly smiled and said, "Fellow cultivator, I have no ill intentions. It's just..." He hesitated for a bit before continuing. "It's just that there's a great benefit that I need fellow cultivators' help with the Shang G-realm restriction." Qiu Siping was a smart person. After hearing Wang Lin's words, he immediately guessed that he was in danger. However, he pretended not to know and didn't ask any questions. Wang Lin's expression was calm and his eyes flashed red. Qiu Siping secretly gritted his teeth and anxiously said, "Fellow cultivator, you and I are both late-stage core formation cultivators. If you listen to me, then forming your nascent soul is just around the corner." The red light in Wang Lin's eyes gradually disappeared. He stared at this person and gloomily said, "My patience is limited. I will only give you 3 sentences. If you can't move me, then don't blame Wang for being ruthless. Chiu Saiping secretly cursed in his heart, but his expression didn't show the slightest bit. He took a deep breath and said, I presume fellow cultivator knows that there is a huge gap between core formation and nascent soul. If you want to form your nascent soul, even if you find a place with dense spiritual energy, there is still a high chance of failure. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he said the first sentence. Chiu Saiping paused for a moment, but he quickly continued. Unless you have a medicine that can increase the chances of forming your nascent soul, the amount of spiritual energy required to form your nascent soul is simply not enough. Wang Lin glanced at this person and said the second sentence. Although I don't have any medicine, I know of an item that is countless times more precious than a spirit pill. If you can eat and devour this item, then forming your nascent soul won't be difficult. This item is the nascent soul of a nascent soul cultivator. I know of a place that has at least 2 nascent souls. Chiu Saiping almost finished his last sentence in one breath. I've been updating 6,000 words for 2 days in a row. I hope there will be a third day. I beg for recommendation votes. I can see that you don't plan on giving me your monthly votes. No matter how much I beg, it's useless. I only hope that all the readers who read this book will give me at least 5 recommendation votes. I only need 1 vote. Chapter 206. Wang Lin's expression remained the same, but his heart skipped a beat. The so-called returning breath was when a nascent soul cultivator was invaded by an external devil during cultivation. The devil would then entangle the nascent soul in their nascent soul, making it impossible for the nascent soul to leave their body. This was the returning breath. The only way to solve this problem was to place the cultivator in a place that was isolated from spiritual energy and let the cultivator drive out the external devil on their own. If an outsider were to help, it would be useless unless their cultivation level was higher than the returning breath cultivators, or even higher by an entire realm. If the returning breath cultivator was unable to awaken after a long period of time, then the nascent soul would be infiltrated by the external devil. The nascent soul would disappear and the body would rot. Generally speaking, most returning breath cultivators could awaken, but their cultivation level would decrease. However, it was better than losing their life. Returning to rest wasn't very common in the cultivation world. At least until now, Wang Lin hadn't heard of a cultivator using returning to rest. After Chiu Saiping finished speaking, he immediately stared at Wang Lin, wanting to find some clues from his expression. Unfortunately, Wang Lin's expression didn't change at all, and he remained calm from beginning to end. Wang Lin pondered for a bit, and the red light in his eyes dimmed. He looked at Chiu Saiping and slowly said, How did you know about the existence of a returning breath cultivator? Chiu Saiping let out a sigh of relief. As long as Wang Lin asked a question, it meant that the agreement of 3 sentences was over. Chiu Saiping didn't doubt that if his 3 sentences didn't move the other party, then this person wouldn't hesitate to kill him. They were both at the advanced stage of the completion level, but the gap between them was huge. Chiu Saiping bitterly smiled. He didn't want to give up. To him, his opponent must have some kind of powerful treasure, or else he wouldn't be able to attack with such power that he couldn't even fight back. When he heard Wang Lin's question, he quickly said, Fellow cultivator, this is a long story. How about we sit down and let me explain it to you? Wang Lin looked at him and nodded. Chiu Saiping immediately flew forward. Strands of black mist appeared beneath his feet, carrying him to the pavilion at the peak of the mountain. After Chiu Saiping left, Wang Lin's body flew forward and he landed lightly on the small pavilion on the mountain peak. He waved his sleeve, and a breeze blew away some of the fine dust on the stone bench. He lifted the hem of the bench and sat on it. Although he was at the back, he entered the pavilion at the same time as Chiu Saiping. Although Chiu Saiping's expression was normal, his heart tightened. His pupils contracted, but he quickly returned to normal. He knew that this was definitely a warning, and its objective was to let him know that even if he played some tricks to escape, he would definitely be unable to escape their pursuit. In fact, that was exactly what Wang Lin was trying to do. He paid close attention to what Chiu Saiping said. In fact, anything related to nascent soul formation would attract his attention. After all, Wang Lin's current cultivation level had reached the late stage of core formation. Forming a nascent soul was something he had to consider. Once he was able to form his nascent soul, then what awaited him would be to kill his way back to the state of Zhao. He would stir up chaos and kill until rivers of blood flowed. He would turn the sky of the state of Zhao blood red and the land of the state of Zhao red. He would make all the cultivators of the state of Zhao unable to forget that bloody day. He would make all his enemies in the state of Zhao use their blood to worship the ancestors of the Wang family. He wanted the entire Tang family, from the elders to the descendants, and anyone related to them, to be completely annihilated. He wanted old man Jima to die without a burial place and all his disciples to howl miserably for months before they died. He wanted all the people who secretly helped the Tang family to be punished. They all had to pay a price that they couldn't bear. More importantly, he wanted to extract Tang Huayuan's soul, skin him, bone him, and cut off his flesh. In short, he wanted to use every method he could think of to pay back the 400 years of pain and hatred. Qiu Siping waved his right hand, and a wine jug and cup appeared in his hand. He personally poured 2 cups, took a sip, and smiled. Fellow cultivator, this is wine made from the broken cloud fruit in the North Sea of Devils. Once you drink it, the aftertaste is endless. Fellow cultivator, why don't you try it? Wang Lin didn't rush Qiu Siping to answer. He looked at the wine cup and carefully observed it, as if there was something very interesting inside. The wine in the cup was dark green in color. It looked crystal clear and extremely beautiful. Qiu Siping took a sip for a long time and noticed that Wang Lin didn't seem to have any interest in this matter. He bitterly smiled, put down the cup, and slowly said, "Fellow cultivator, if anyone else asked, I wouldn't say anything, but you are different. You and I are both late-stage core formation cultivators. I'm afraid your biggest dream is to form your nascent soul and become one of those nascent soul cultivators. As for the returning breath nascent soul cultivators I was talking about, one of them is my master." With that, Qiu Siping stared at Wang Lin. Wang Lin looked at the cup for a bit more before putting it down. He calmly said, "Killing my master is not a big deal. I did it before." Qiu Siping laughed and said, "I won't hide it from fellow cultivator. When my master accepted me as a disciple, he didn't have any good intentions. He and my senior apprentice brother were both nascent soul cultivators. When they were in closed-door training, I secretly did something to them. Now that I think about it, it has been 30 years. According to my calculations, the 2 of them are on the verge of being destroyed by an external demon. Now is the time for us to take their nascent souls. When the time comes, you and I will each have 1 nascent soul. Once we consume it, our chances of forming our nascent souls will increase greatly." Wang Lin frowned and pondered for a bit. He looked at Qiu Siping and slowly said, "What does this matter have to do with Shangji's restrictions?" Qiu Siping bitterly smiled. He picked up the cup and drank it in 1 gulp. Then he sighed and said, "My master's closed-door training place is actually an ancient cultivator's cave. After he accidentally obtained it, he took it for himself. The reason I was able to do something to them while they were in closed-door training was because I had already prepared for it for many years. I studied some of the restrictions in the cave for a long time before I was able to launch a sneak attack. However, after the cave closed, it would be very troublesome for me to open it. There are too many restrictions inside. I didn't expect that just triggering a restriction to attract external demons would cause a series of chain reactions. In the end, I didn't gain anything. The loss outweighs the gain." Wang Lin frowned and pondered. Qiu Siping slapped his bag of holding, and a few jade slips appeared in his hand. He placed the jade slips on the table and said, "These are some of the Shangji's restrictions that I copied from there. You could take a look. With your restriction techniques, you will definitely be able to determine if they are real or fake." Wang Lin picked up one of the jade slips and scanned it with his divine sense. After a while, he picked up another one. After a long time, he had looked through all the jade slips one by one. These jade slips recorded some ancient restrictions. From the looks of it, they were defensive restrictions that were placed to protect the cave. Qiu Siping asked, "Fellow cultivator, what do you think?" Wang Lin pondered for a moment. He looked up at Qiu Siping and said, What are the cultivation levels of the two nascent soul cultivators? Xiao Siping immediately replied, My master is at the early stage of nascent soul. As for my eldest senior apprentice brother, he has just formed his nascent soul. If fellow cultivator can open the restriction, then my master's nascent soul will belong to you. Wang Lin pondered for a bit and said, I can't make a decision right now. Let me think about it for a few days, and then I'll make a decision with you. Xiao Siping didn't mind and nodded. That's how it should be. I also need a few days to prepare some magic treasures. Fellow cultivator, you and I have turned enemies into friends. I deeply apologize to fellow cultivator for all the previous misunderstandings. With that, he stood up, took a few steps back, and bowed to Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression was the same as usual, but he was cautious inside. In his opinion, this person's act was quite good. However, with Wang Lin's shrewdness, how could he be fooled by the other person's appearance? He smiled and cupped his fists. Fellow cultivator, if that's the case, then let's set it to 7 days from now. I'll give you my answer. Xiao Siping smiled wholeheartedly. He nodded and cupped his fists. Wang Lin's body suddenly turned into a beam of light and disappeared into the horizon. After Wang Lin left, Xiao Siping's smile suddenly disappeared and a cold light flashed in his eyes. His body suddenly moved and he flew in the opposite direction from Wang Lin. However, he did not notice at all that there was a completely transparent object beside the pavilion that had clearly seen his expression just now. Furthermore, when he left, this object had silently followed him. Not long after, Wang Lin returned to Qilin City. Through the devil general Su Ligua, he could closely monitor Xiao Siping's actions. Wang Lin didn't care if what Xiao Siping said about the returning breath nascent soul being his master was true or false. As long as he could confirm that there was a returning breath nascent soul in the ancient cultivator's cave, then that was enough. The reason he delayed it for 7 days was because he wanted to arrange for Su Ligua to secretly monitor him. He wanted to see if the matter about the returning breath nascent soul was true. After returning to the cave inside the Qilin B scale, Wang Lin immediately sat down cross-legged. He wiped his bag of holding and 2 items appeared. One of them was Yun Fei's storage bag. As for the other, it was the mysterious pill cauldron. Wang Lin swept through Yun Fei's bag of holding with his divine sense. There were many miscellaneous items inside. Wang Lin only glanced at them and then ignored them. Instead, he took out several jade slips and looked through them one by one. After looking through them, Wang Lin's expression changed. These jade slips had a series of detailed introductions to alchemy. It could be said to be a general outline of alchemy. When he picked up a white jade slip and examined it with his divine sense, he was startled. Inside the jade slip was a restriction that prevented outsiders from examining it. Wang Lin's heart filled with interest. He picked up the jade slip and activated his divine sense, which allowed him to see through restrictions. His eyes began to shine with a strange light. His pupils formed an oval shape and countless restrictions and symbols flashed across his eyes. After a long time, Wang Lin's right hand moved. His index finger pointed in the air and then pointed a few more times. Next, a thin line appeared between the dots, connecting them together to form a triangular pattern. The instant the image appeared, he reached out with his right hand, grabbed it, and pressed it onto the jade slip. Instantly, the jade slip began to flicker with bright light. The light grew brighter and brighter until it reached a pinnacle. Then, it suddenly went dark, and the jade slip turned from white to black. Wang Lin scanned it with his divine sense. This time, he easily saw what was inside the jade slip. After looking for a bit, Wang Lin sneered in his heart. Yun Fei really deserved to die. When she first met him, she offered to give him a jade slip with a pill recipe on it as the prize for her life. After looking at the jade slip, Wang Lin didn't pay much attention to it. Although he was tempted by some of the pills inside, if it was before he obtained the divine blessing tactic, he might have taken action. However, after obtaining the ancient god tactic, Wang Lin believed that instead of using the herbs required for alchemy, it would be better to consume them himself and use the ancient shun tactic to refine them. The effects should be about the same. But now, after looking at the real jade slip, he immediately noticed the difference between the two. First of all, Although the ingredients were the same, the ratio was different. This small difference could determine the life and death of the person who consumed it. In addition, the real jade slip not only contained the pill recipe, but also some descriptions of the pills. Through these descriptions, Wang Lin was surprised to find that alchemy was different from directly consuming ingredients. His previous thoughts were completely wrong. Even if the same ingredients were placed in front of him, consuming them would be completely different from refining them into pills. Alchemy focused on mixing all kinds of ingredients together to create a transformation that would trigger another effect. Actually, it was no wonder that Wang Lin didn't understand. Ancient gods rarely refined pills. Even when they did, they only mixed all kinds of ingredients together and consumed them. Furthermore, he had never come into contact with alchemy in his previous life. Only when Ling Yuan had come into contact with him did they talk about alchemy. However, at that time, Wang Lin was focused on reaching the core formation stage, so he didn't ask too much about it. After carefully putting away the jade slip, Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He had already decided that he had to master alchemy. He took a deep breath and looked at the pill furnace a few more times. He took out his bag of holding and tried to put the pill furnace inside. However, he found that no matter what he tried, the pill furnace couldn't enter his bag of holding. This piqued Wang Lin's interest. After looking at it for a bit, Wang Lin didn't act rashly. Instead, he put the pill furnace in his chest pocket. His right hand slapped his bag of holding, and a small white flag appeared in his hand. He took out the flag and continued to refine the restriction flag while observing Qiu Saiping's actions through Su Ligua. Su Ligua was very excited at this moment. He believed that in his master's heart, his importance had far surpassed his second brother's. This made him very proud. It has to be said that the appearance of his second brother made him feel a sense of danger. His second brother's ferocious nature was something that even he was afraid of. However, he believed that he was the first demon to follow his master, so he couldn't lose to his second brother. Otherwise, he was worried that one day there would be the appearance of his third brother, fourth brother, fifth brother, and even old 90 brother. If all of them were to lose to him, it would be worse than killing him. Suli was secretly decided that he couldn't let this happen. He was the boss, and this position must be maintained forever. With this kind of grand ambition, the demon was much more obedient than before. Basically, he would clench his teeth and complete everything that Wang Lin told him to do. Secretly, the demon was no longer lazy and became very diligent. He was no longer picky. As long as it was divine sense, he would rush up and snatch it. At the same time, every time he snatched divine sense, he had to give Wang Lin a certain amount. This made him feel like he was digging out his flesh. But overall, this devil was definitely several times more obedient than before. He was now following Qiu Saiping closely. No matter how fast his opponent was, he could easily catch up. As he chased, he thought back to the beauty of the man in black. The man in black was a middle-stage core formation cultivator. He had to waste some of his hands and feet before he was able to devour the golden core. Since his master didn't ask about it, he secretly found it and ate it. He stared at Qiu Saiping in front of him and couldn't help but feel greedy. He thought to himself that if his master could beat this late-stage core formation cultivator half to death and then give him the golden core, that would be great. From his point of view, this person was very cunning. He almost never walked in a straight line and would even stop to stare behind him. As a result, it wasn't hard for him to chase after him. Watching Qiu Saiping walk like this, Su Li was slowly realized something. He thought, so there are so many ways to fly. I've finally learned it. In the future, when I compete with second brother, I'll use it. Just at this moment, Qiu Saiping suddenly stopped and slowed down. He landed on the ground and looked around. This was a wasteland. Aside from the fog of the Sea of Devils, there was nothing else. After he landed, he sneered and shouted, "Fellow cultivator, you have hidden for so long. Come out." The devil Su Ligua was startled. He was standing behind Qiu Saiping and was startled by this shout. He thought, not good, I've been discovered. He was about to retreat, but he quickly stopped because Qiu Saiping had already turned around and was staring at him. Su Ligua revealed a fierce expression and thought, I'll fight you to the death. If I can devour your golden core, I'll be a bit stronger. Even if Master asks, I'll say that he forced me to. I have no choice but to devour it because he attacked first. Just as he was about to make a move, he suddenly stopped. Chiu Siping had turned around and was still shouting, "Fellow cultivator, if you don't show yourself, I'll have to make a move." The Devil Su Ligua was very confused. He thought, I'm right here. Didn't you see me just now? Why are you saying I won't show myself? Su Ligua's heart was filled with anger as he once again floated in front of Chiu Siping. He was less than 10 feet away from Chiu Siping. Su Ligua thought to himself, make your move. As long as you make your move, I'll devour you. Even if I can't devour all of you, I'll still devour half of you. However, after waiting for a bit, Chiu Siping turned around again. This time, the slow Su Ligua finally noticed that something was wrong. He floated in front of Chiu Siping again. After looking at him for a bit, he began to curse in his heart. He thought, you bastard, you didn't even notice me and dared to trick me. Chiu Siping waited for a bit and finally confirmed that there was no one around. There shouldn't be anyone behind him, but he was still worried. He sat down cross-legged and quietly waited for time to pass. Su Ligua angrily floated to the side and fiercely stared at Chiu Siping. He began to struggle in his heart. Should he ignore his master's scolding and go all out against this person? This person was too hateful. He actually dared to play tricks on the great Su Ligua. This was something he couldn't tolerate. However, after thinking about it for a long time, he suppressed his anger. This was a critical moment. If he made a mistake, he would definitely be surpassed by his second brother. It was better to wait until his position was stable. Then he wouldn't have to endure this kind of humiliation. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. During these 2 days, Wang Lin didn't leave his cave at all. He continued to refine the restriction flag and place countless restrictions on it. At this moment, the white flag in front of him was filled with countless black dots. From a rough estimate, there were at least 200 to 300 of them. Inside, there were 9 restrictions in a group, and there was absolutely no similarity between each group. Their uses were all unpredictable. In truth, aside from the fact that the materials were rare, the process of making the restriction flag wasn't very difficult. In fact, any random cultivator who knew how to use restrictions would be able to create it. However, there was a lot of knowledge involved. If a normal cultivator were to make it, then the restrictions placed on the flag would not be very strong. Because of this, even if the restriction flag was made, it would not be very strong. In addition, the restriction flag was like a formation. It depended on the caster's design. If the caster placed 999,999 restrictions in a row and there were no similarities between the groups, then if the restriction flag was successfully made, it would be a treasure that would terrify anyone. The power of the restriction flag would be unimaginably powerful. On the other hand, if one were to continuously lay down 999,999 defensive restrictions, then the effect of using this banner to defend against them would still be the same, and it would reach an astounding state. Similarly, if the attribute of the restriction flag was to trap the enemy, then after reaching the highest quality of 999,999 restrictions, the power of the restriction flag would be terrifying. Therefore, the final strength of the restriction banner depended on the maker's will. Of course, although this was easy to say, the difficulty of creating it was not much lower than ascending to the heavens. For example, if you were to create 999 restrictions, then every 9 restrictions would form a group. In other words, you would need 99 different groups of restrictions. However, if you wanted to go the extreme route of creating 99 different restrictions, then it would be very difficult. However, if you had a deep understanding of restrictions, it wouldn't be impossible. However, if it was the second grade, there would be 9,999 restrictions, and there would be 999 groups of restrictions within it. The difficulty of the second grade would increase by 10 times, and it would be extremely rare to find someone who could create a single attack or defense formation. There was no need to even mention the third quality, which required 999,999 restrictions. It was 100 times more difficult than the first quality. Because of this, there were very few people in the world who could master so many restrictions with a single attribute. As for the final quality of 999,999, the difficulty increased by 1,000 times. This was already a legendary artifact. At the very least, from the memories of the ancient god that Wang Lin had obtained, it wasn't that there wasn't a restriction flag with a single attribute. However, a restriction flag with a single attribute had never appeared before. A restriction flag with a single attribute was, at most, the third quality. Even if it was only the third quality, its power wasn't much different from a restriction flag with 999,999 restrictions. In some aspects, it might even be a level higher. Therefore, although it was easy to make a restriction flag, it was extremely difficult to obtain great power. The restriction flag that Wang Lin wanted to make was not an extreme one. It was a mix of restrictions that could attack, defend, protect, search, trap, etc. Only by doing this would he be able to quickly make a restriction flag. Wang Lin knew that in the Sea of Devils, he could be in a life and death situation at any time. Therefore, he had to make a restriction flag as fast as possible. After testing its power, he would decide whether or not to spend a lot of time making a restriction flag with a single attribute. After all, he had a total of 3 ink stones in his bag of holding. He could make 3 restriction flags. Wang Lin calmed himself down. His hands moved, and he created another restriction. At this moment, he used his divine sense to detect Qiu Siping's actions through Su Ligua. After sitting there quietly for 2 days, Qiu Siping's body suddenly moved, and he disappeared into thin air. Su Ligua was startled. He immediately went underground and found Qiu Siping's figure. There was a cave under the wasteland. The cave was not big, but it was hidden very well. Su Ligua was able to smoothly enter the cave. The restrictions on the outside had no effect on him. After entering the cave, he immediately saw Qiu Siping reading a book in a stone room. This stone room was like a sea of books. There were countless books placed all around the room. Most of them were very old. Some of them didn't even exist in the form of jades. Instead, they were engraved on bamboo. Qiu Siping's expression was very serious. He carefully flipped through the books and put them down gently. After a while, his face lit up. He took a large roll of bamboo and placed it on a stone table. He slowly opened the bamboo and began to carefully read through it. Su Ligua was about to go forward, but at this moment, a layer of gentle light suddenly appeared in the stone room and blocked him outside. The moment the light flashed, Qiu Siping immediately raised his head and scanned the area with his divine sense. In the end, he didn't find anything. He revealed a suspicious expression and his eyes kept looking around. After a long time, he lowered his head again and continued to read the bamboo. However, his right hand was constantly forming seals, ready to attack at any time. With the gentle light blocking him, Su Ligua couldn't go forward. Thus, he kept looking inside from the outside. From his position, he could only see a few small words on the bamboo. Shang-Ji restriction. After the time it takes for 3 incense sticks to burn, Qiu Siping frowned and closed the bamboo. He revealed a pondering expression. Then he closed the bamboo and placed it back on the shelf. After searching for a long time, he took out 2 gray jade slips and walked out of the stone room. In the stone room next to him, he sat down cross-legged and picked up one of the jade slips. He pressed it against his forehead and closed his eyes in contemplation. Time flashed by, and 5 of the 7 days had passed. At noon, Qiu Siping suddenly opened his eyes and placed the jade slips into his bag of holding. Then, he formed a seal with his right hand and shot out a ray of light that landed on the wall. Suddenly, the entire wall made a cracking sound and moved to the side, revealing a concave platform. On the platform, there were 3 wax figures. The one in the middle had white hair and angry eyes that revealed a sense of majesty. On his side stood a man and a woman. The man's eyes were gloomy and his face was handsome. He looked to be in his 20s. As for the woman, she was beautiful and graceful. Her eyes contained a trace of sorrow, causing her to look extremely lifelike. Qiu Siping calmly looked at the 3 wax figures. When his gaze fell on the woman, his eyes revealed a hint of tenderness. However, when he looked at the old man and the man, His gaze was filled with deep hatred. Old man, senior apprentice brother, I finally found someone who is good at ancient restrictions. You didn't think that after so many years, I would finally be able to reunite with all of you. This time, that treasure is mine. After Chiu Saiping finished speaking, he began to laugh like crazy. His laughter contained a hint of madness. Finally, he reached out his right hand and slowly touched the woman's face. He carefully rubbed her face and muttered, I will revive you. Even if the price is the entire sea of devils, I am willing. He took a deep breath and withdrew his right hand. He took a few steps back and shot out another ray of light. Suddenly, the surrounding walls slowly closed. Wang Lin was sitting in a lotus position inside the cave. He clearly saw all of this through Su Ligua. After pondering a bit, his eyes lit up and he made a decision. Late at night the next day, Wang Lin placed the last set of restrictions on the flag. The small flag suddenly moved and the black dot on the flag expanded until it completely surrounded the flag. At this moment, the originally white flag was completely black. Wisps of an ancient aura were emitted from the flag as restrictions began to appear on the flag. In the end, they turned into faint golden runes that flickered on the flag's surface. The runes circled around the flag and climbed up the pole. Soon, the entire restriction flag was filled with countless runes. At this moment, there were still countless symbols flying out from the flag. Soon, a line formed by the symbols began to extend around the flag. At the same time, above Qilin City in the inner sea of devils, beyond the thick fog that extended hundreds of thousands of meters above the fog, there was a starry sky. At this moment, countless red clouds began to gather in the sky. These red clouds grew larger and larger until they were almost 50 kilometers wide. Slivers of foul gas came out from the red clouds. The moment the fog in the Sea of Devils touched the foul gas, it began to rustle. It was as if a hot iron had touched snow. At this moment, in the eastern part of the Sea of Devils, a person walked out from a mountain filled with skeletons. This person was surrounded by a deathly aura, making it impossible to see his appearance. He raised his head and looked at the thick fog above him. His eyes seemed to be able to penetrate the fog and see the red clouds. He muttered, "Divine retribution? Impossible. Ever since the ancient cultivation world was destroyed, there's been no divine retribution. Cultivators now are all hiding from the heavens. So how could they trigger divine retribution? Could it be that there are ancient cultivators that didn't die? If that's the case, then it's a top-notch tonic." After saying that, the person's body suddenly moved, and he teleported toward the place that caused the red cloud. In the western part of the Sea of Devils, there was a giant basin. There was seawater inside the basin. It has to be said that right now was not the season for the fog to turn into the sea, but for seawater to appear here was incredible. At this moment, the seawater began to churn violently. At the center of it, a man in a blue robe stepped on the waves and slowly rose into the air. He stared at the sky with a hint of surprise in his eyes and said in a low voice, "Divine tribulation? When did such a lively thing happen in the Sea of Devils? I'm afraid the appearance of this divine retribution will attract all those old monsters that have been hiding." He revealed a smile as he floated into the air. His right hand reached out and the seawater in the basin began to rumble as it slowly floated into the air. This scene was extremely shocking. After the seawater in the basin floated up, that person immediately melted into the seawater. He pointed forward with his right hand, and the seawater suddenly began to move. It rushed forward with the force of 1,000 caddies. In terms of speed, it was several times faster than the teleportation of nascent soul cultivators. Moreover, it was getting faster and faster. With the sound of thunder, it disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. In the southern part of the Sea of Devils, on the third floor of the treasure refining sect shop in an ordinary city, an old man with white hair and a face full of wrinkles was holding a beast bone and talking nonstop to a Foundation establishment cultivator. "Brother, this item is really a treasure. Let me tell you about its 74th use. Listen to me slowly," Luli said. The Foundation establishment cultivator's face was livid. If it wasn't for the fact that fighting was forbidden in the treasure refining pavilion, he would have already killed this old man who had been bothering him from the first floor to the third floor. From what he could see, This old man was only at the 7th or 8th layer of chi condensation. What he couldn't stand was that when the old man spoke, his saliva spilled everywhere. This almost made him want to take out his treasure. In the end, he was too angry, so he waved his sleeves and quickly left the treasure refining pavilion. However, the old man was still bothering him. The foundation establishment cultivator saw that a lot of people were looking at him, so he threw out a low-quality spirit stone, picked up the beast bone, and left with a sneer. He had already made up his mind that tonight he would teach this old man a lesson. The white-haired old man smiled as he picked up the spirit stone. He blew on it and carefully placed it in his pocket. However, just at this moment, his expression suddenly changed and he looked up at the clouds. I admit that today's 9,000 words were all thanks to Reader Continuous Roasting Duck, his 30 godly weapon reminders. If it was 12,000 words, then I would have given up. I struggled for a long time today, but I still couldn't resist this temptation. Chapter 207. The white-haired old man's originally cloudy eyes suddenly shone with an extremely bright light. His slightly hunchbacked body slowly straightened up, and at this moment, his entire person's aura suddenly rose. All of the cultivators in the city suddenly lost control of their spiritual energy. They all felt like their spiritual energy was leaving their bodies and were terrified. This feeling came quickly and left just as quickly. The white-haired old man's body suddenly moved, and he disappeared without a trace in an instant. At this moment, a roar came from the black fog above the Sea of Devils. Shortly after, a giant black tortoise that was tens of thousands of feet long came out of the black fog. Its huge head emitted waves of majestic pressure. After looking down, it opened its mouth and took a deep breath. Immediately, all of the spiritual chi within a radius of 100 kilometers was sucked in by it like rivers returning to the sea. Then it burped and settled down, quickly moving forward in the black fog. On its back was the white-haired old man from before. He cursed, "Animal, I let you carry me for a trip and you sucked in so much spiritual energy. Are you not afraid of bursting to death? If you do, I'll have a taste of the black tortoise's flesh." As for Wang Lin, he was sitting in the lotus position inside the cave. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a sense of fear. This feeling came from above the Sea of Devils. Wang Lin frowned. He waved his right hand in an attempt to put away the restriction flag, but he found that the restriction flag was surrounded by an invisible force, and he couldn't put it away. This strange scene caused Wang Lin's expression to change. He suddenly stood up and formed many seals with his hand. However, every time the seals landed on the restriction flag, they were immediately dissipated by the invisible force. Not a single seal was able to penetrate the restriction flag. At this moment, the fear in his heart grew more and more intense. He frowned and immediately opened his eye of divine sense. Suddenly, his expression changed greatly. Through his divine sense eye, he clearly saw a thin red line coming from the restriction flag. This red line ignored the barrier of the cave and went straight up. Wang Lin's expression was gloomy. Without a word, he charged forward, opened the door to the cave, and charged out. Outside the cave, he stabilized his body and looked up. He saw the red line come out of the cave and go into the black fog. Wang Lin pondered a bit. He pointed to his brow and the second devil appeared. After the second devil appeared, it didn't wait for Wang Lin's order before disappearing. With Wang Lin's divine sense eye, he could see a very fast shadow enter the black fog. Wang Lin's expression was gloomy. He looked around and found that there were only a few people in the city, but no one noticed the red line. Wang Lin's heart was filled with doubt. The feeling of fear became even stronger. This feeling was similar to when Wang Lin was facing the ancient god Tu Si. He pondered a bit and quickly searched through the ancient god Tu Si's memories. He wanted to use these clues to figure out what was going on. Why did such a strange thing happen when the restriction flag appeared? As for the second devil, its speed was very fast as it flew through the black fog. When it was alive, it was a beast that excelled at flying, and now that it had turned into a devil, its speed was even faster. In truth, if they were comparing speed, even Wang Lin wouldn't be faster than it. If Chiu Saiping hadn't trapped the beast with a black fog treasure 6 days ago, it would have disappeared without a trace with its speed if he had given it a chance. It was as fast as lightning as it charged toward the sea of devils that had turned into mist. At this moment, above the sea of devils, the expanding red clouds suddenly shrank a bit. Originally, it was more than 10 kilometers wide, but now, a bump appeared in the center. The protrusion grew larger and larger. Finally, Xingwei looked like a ball filled with water as he fell down. At this moment, a thunderous roar came from the bottom of the ball. Then, a hole appeared at the bottom, and a pillar of red clouds that looked like it could pierce through the entire Suzuka fell from the sky with the power to destroy the world. The instant the pillar of red clouds descended, the surrounding red clouds shrank rapidly. They shrank from their original size of 5 miles to 7 or 8 miles. It was clear that all the red clouds had gathered inside the pillar and descended from the sky. The speed of the pillar of red clouds was unimaginable. In the blink of an eye, it descended from the sky into the fog of the Sea of Devils. Along the way, the sound of something tearing through the air could be heard. Circular ripples appeared along the path of the red cloud pillar and spread out in all directions. Apart from the ring-shaped ripples, there were also countless tiny spatial cracks in the surroundings. The cracks were so dense that they looked like shattered mirrors. Anyone who looked at them could not help but feel shocked. The moment the pillar of red clouds landed on the black fog of the Sea of Devils, the black fog in the Sea of Devils began to boil. All of the beasts inside the black fog began to roar as they tried to escape. At the same time, the black fog in the Sea of Devils dissipated and turned into black clouds. However, the pillar of red clouds didn't slow down and continued to descend. As it sank, more and more of the fog in the Sea of Devils turned into black clouds. All of the fog in the Sea of Devils, whether it was the outer sea or the inner sea, began to churn violently and gather toward the red cloud. If one looked from above, they would see that all the fog in the Sea of Devils had formed a giant vortex. At the center of the vortex was the pillar of red clouds that could destroy the heavens. The endless black fog continued to move toward the center. At the same time, more and more black clouds floated up from the pillar of red clouds. In the end, after the pillar of red clouds sank about 2/3 of the way into the fog, all of the fog around the Sea of Devils appeared in the inner part of the Sea of Devils. At this moment, for the first time, the fog that had surrounded the Sea of Devils for countless years completely disappeared. There was no longer the obstruction of the sea water or the fog. For the first time, sunlight truly shined on the outer sea of the Sea of Devils. The light illuminated the pitch-black land and the ancient city, as well as the countless cultivators with panicked expressions. Some of the cultivators had never seen sunlight this strong in their lives, so they couldn't help but become excited. If the Sea of Devils was a giant circle, then at this moment, all of the fog around the circle had shrunk. All of the fog had either evaporated into black clouds or was being sucked into the inner sea. At this moment, the pillar of red clouds had shrunk a few times. All of the black fog in the Sea of Devils had condensed into a thick pillar of black fog and collided with the pillar of red clouds. Immediately, a ring-shaped wave of air spread out from the point of contact, quickly spreading out in all directions. Any creature in the fog that was touched by the ring-shaped wave of air would be turned to dust, dying without a single trace. At the same time, the pillar of red clouds finally dissipated. However, this wasn't the end. In the sky, the remaining 7 or 8 kilometers of red clouds suddenly moved. They turned into a pillar of red clouds and descended once more. This time, all of the red clouds rushed out. There were no longer any red clouds in the sky. They all turned into pillars of red clouds and descended along the same path as before. In the first 2/3 of the way, because there was no fog blocking it, almost in the blink of an eye, the red cloud pillar landed in its previous position, colliding with a rapidly rising black fog. A thunderous rumble that all the cultivators in the Sea of Devils could hear came from this location. At the same time, large amounts of black fog were completely destroyed. Black clouds rose up from the Sea of Devils and gathered in the sky. After the pillar of red clouds shrank by more than half, it still stubbornly descended. The moment the second devil saw that the situation was bad, it quickly retreated. Wang Lin clearly saw this shocking scene through the second devil. At this moment, almost all of the cultivators in the Sea of Devils came out of the cities and caves. Even those that were in closed-door cultivation stopped and looked up at the sky in terror. When Wang Lin saw the pillar of red clouds through the second devil, a word suddenly appeared in his mind. Divine retribution, Wang Lin muttered to himself. Through the ancient god's memories, he quickly scanned through everything related to divine retribution. In his memories, the ancient god 2C had experienced countless divine retributions. Aside from the fear he had of divine retribution at the beginning, once his body was reformed 4 times, divine retribution was the best tonic for the ancient god. At the same time, every time the god refined a treasure, it would trigger divine retribution. Sometimes, the ancient god would use the power of the divine retribution to determine the quality of the treasure he was refining. The more powerful the divine retribution was, the more powerful the treasure was. The weaker the divine retribution was, the weaker the treasure was. Of course, this was only a very rough calculation. In reality, there was a big difference. For example, the power of Wang Lin's restriction flag couldn't compare to the divine retribution at all. In reality, the real reason for the divine retribution was the ink stone. The ink stone had been in the ancient god's body for too long, so it naturally contained a trace of the ancient god's aura. This was why the divine retribution that hadn't appeared in the cultivation world for countless years descended for the first time. Similarly, the divine retribution hadn't appeared for countless years, so the power it had accumulated had reached a terrifying level. That was why this divine retribution from a treasure contained an unimaginable amount of power. All of this information flashed through Wang Lin's mind. He understood that the thing that triggered the divine retribution was the restriction flag. Without saying a word, he quickly rushed back to the cave. Looking at the restriction flag that was still floating in the air, his hands continuously formed restrictions in an attempt to take it away. According to the information Wang Lin obtained from the god's memory, if the divine retribution really hit the restriction flag, it would immediately turn to dust. Wang Lin couldn't allow the treasure that he had spent so much effort to refine to be destroyed by the divine retribution. His eyes shined brightly as he continued to create restrictions in an attempt to take the restriction flag back. Slowly, the invisible force around a restriction flag loosened a bit, but it still didn't ease up. At this moment, thunderous rumbles came from the sky, and the black fog quickly dissipated. In the blink of an eye, for the first time, there was no more water or fog in the Sea of Devils. What was revealed was a very large, borderless land. The red cloud pillar no longer had anything blocking it. It descended from the sky at its fastest speed. Its target was the Qilin Beast City. The cultivators inside the city all revealed looks of panic. They all used their full power and scattered in all directions. The red cloud pillar descended. The moment it hit the Qilin Beast City, the Qilin Beast body suddenly collapsed. Starting from the head, all the scales on its body were lifted up by the destructive force. Wang Lin was inside the cave when he felt a powerful force coming from all directions. In an instant, he coughed out blood. He let out a sigh and was about to give up. However, at this moment, the invisible force around the restriction flag suddenly disappeared. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he grabbed the restriction flag. At the same time, his body charged out from the collapsed Qilin Beast. However, the moment he charged out, a red cloud suddenly shot out from the collapsed Qilin Beast and shot toward the restriction flag in Wang Lin's hand. The speed of the red cloud was too fast. If Wang Lin put the restriction flag into his bag of holding, it would be useless. The bag of holding would only collapse. At this moment, Wang Lin clenched his teeth and bent his right hand. The moment the red cloud shot toward him, he flipped the restriction flag in his left hand. With the flip of his right hand, a magic treasure that he didn't control appeared in his hand. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The moment Wang Lin switched to the magic treasure, the red cloud had already landed on it. The magic treasure immediately collapsed, and Wang Lin's body immediately flew out. However, at the moment the treasure collapsed, there was still a very small red line that flew out. This time, without Wang Lin having any time to react, the red line landed on his right hand. At this moment, Wang Lin's body trembled, and he coughed out several mouthfuls of blood. Even his golden core shrank a lot. Only then was he able to stop the red cloud from exploding inside his body. Wang Lin's face was pale. He could feel that the spiritual energy inside his body was in chaos. He was using the power of his golden core to stop the red cloud from exploding. However, he knew that his time was limited. If he couldn't get rid of the red cloud in a short period of time, then what awaited him would be the destruction of his golden core. Once all of his spiritual energy was gone, his golden core would shatter and his body would be destroyed. Even his divine sense wouldn't be able to escape the power of the divine retribution. At this moment, a lot of cultivators came out from the Qilin beast. As a result, no one noticed what was happening to Wang Lin. These cultivators all fled in panic. The entire Qilin city was destroyed. At this moment, black rain began to fall from the sky. All of the fog in the Sea of Devils had been evaporated by the power of the divine retribution. Now that the divine retribution had disappeared, the black clouds began to drip with rain. This was the first time rain fell from the sky in the Sea of Devils, even though the rain was black. This time, the divine retribution had a great impact. First, all of the fog in the Sea of Devils disappeared. This caused a chain reaction. Some of the creatures inside the fog died, but most of them managed to escape. Even some of the powerful desolate beasts that lived in the fog appeared in the Sea of Devils one by one. From this moment on, the name of the Sea of Devils should be changed to the Land of Devils. That would be the most appropriate. The appearance of many rare beasts caused a series of incidents of beasts killing people and humans killing beasts. Every cultivator knew that these beasts had cores inside their bodies. Whether it was to refine pills or create incense, they could all increase one's cultivation level. At the same time, because all of the fog above the Sea of Devils disappeared, the Sea of Devils lost its natural barrier. As a result, all of the cultivation countries around the Sea of Devils turned their attention to the Sea of Devils. Luckily, a few large sects in the Sea of Devils that had existed for tens of thousands of years appeared and stabilized the situation. However, in private, there were many cultivators that took advantage of this to kill people and steal their treasures. As a result, the already chaotic situation in the Sea of Devils became even more chaotic. However, none of this had anything to do with Wang Lin. He could clearly feel that his golden core was shrinking. There was a thin, red line on top of his golden core. This red line was rapidly melting the spiritual energy in his golden core. Once the spiritual energy in his golden core completely dissipated, the only thing waiting for Wang Lin would be death. Because his golden core had shrunk, his cultivation level had fallen from the late stage to the mid stage. According to Wang Lin's calculations, in 3 hours, he would fall from the mid stage to the early stage. At that point, it would only take half an hour for his golden core to shatter. As for the 7-day agreement with Qiu Siping, Wang Lin didn't have time to care about it. The most important thing right now was to resolve the divine retribution red line as soon as possible. Wang Lin's face was gloomy. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. In order to survive, he was going to start a massacre. Unfortunately, he had already used up all the spirit liquid in the land of the ancient god. He didn't have much left in Qilin City, or else he would be able to last for a while. Just at this moment, a middle-aged man in black quickly charged toward Wang Lin. At the same time, this person gloomily said, "Mid-stage core formation, it's you." The moment he finished speaking, Wang Lin's eyes lit up. The other party was at the late stage of core formation, but not only did Wang Lin not dodge, he even sped up and charged toward the other party. The black-robed man revealed a mocking smile. Just as he was about to make a move, his body suddenly trembled and his eyes disappeared. At this moment, Wang Lin arrived next to him. Wang Lin grabbed the black-robed man's abdomen and pulled out the golden core. Without any hesitation, Wang Lin swallowed the golden core. He didn't even have time to pick up the bag of holding as he quickly flew off into the distance. His divine sense was spread out like a hungry wolf looking for its next target. Sun Fan was running for his life. Behind him were 2 strange beasts at the late stage of core formation. If he slowed down a bit, they would catch up to him. With his mere foundation building cultivation, he didn't even have the ability to resist. At this moment, the 2 strange beasts were getting closer and closer. Their roars were right next to his ears. Sun Fan bitterly smiled. He knew that he wouldn't be able to escape this time. However, at this moment, a sudden gust of wind blew past him. This gust of wind was extremely powerful, causing Sun Fan's body to involuntarily spin a few times on the spot. When he steadied himself with a shocked expression, he heard the miserable cries of strange beasts. He turned around and was instantly stunned on the spot. He saw a white-haired young man like a demon. His right hand reached into the head of one of the strange beasts, grabbed its core, and swallowed it whole. As for the other strange beast, it was already dead and its body was on the side. The white-haired young man turned around and coldly looked at Sun Fan. He didn't say anything and quickly flew off into the distance. Even though the man had already left, Sun Fan didn't dare to move. The killing intent in the man's gaze had caused his mind to tremble. After a long time, he coughed up a mouthful of blood, and a look of terror appeared on his face as he hurriedly left. Throughout his life, the white-haired young man's demon-like figure had always been in Sun Fan's heart. Even 700 years later, when he reached the nascent soul stage, he would still feel a chill in his heart whenever he thought of the white-haired young man. He would often wake up from his dreams. In the northern part of the Devil Cultivation Basin, two small sects were fighting each other for the core of a strange beast that had been killed by divine retribution. Flying swords and spells filled the sky. However, just as the two sides were fighting fiercely, a white-haired young man descended from the sky. The moment he appeared, he didn't say a word. His eyes released a demonic red glow, and a ray of red lightning shot out from his eyes. It was like a lightning snake as it passed through the cultivators of the two sections. At the same time, he charged into the cultivators of the two sections. Along the way, his hand grabbed the cores of core formation cultivators and swallowed them whole. In less than 10 breaths of time, all of the cultivators here had died. As for the core of the strange beast that caused the two sects to fight, it was swallowed by the white-haired young man. Then he turned into a blur and charged off into the distance. Along the way, whether it was a strange beast or a cultivator, as long as they hadn't reached the nascent soul stage, they would be mercilessly killed by Wang Lin, regardless of whether they were male or female. As he devoured more and more golden cores, his cultivation no longer decreased. The speed at which the golden core shrank finally reached a stable point. However, this was not enough to solve the problem. This stable balance could only last for a few hours. Once the time was up, the golden core would continue to shrink until it collapsed. The only way to solve this problem was to keep killing people for cores. Once he obtained enough spiritual energy, he would be able to force the red line out of his body. Just like that, he would have to kill a lot of people. Wang Lin's eyes were filled with killing intent. He knew that with his current killing speed, it was far from enough. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. He spread out his divine sense and charged forward. A few strange beasts appeared 50 kilometers away from him. The moment Wang Lin's G realm left his body, he slapped his bag of holding and the black poison sword appeared. After killing the strange beasts and taking their cores, Wang Lin didn't stop and continued to charge forward. At the same time, he spread out his divine sense to search for places where there were many cultivators or strange beasts. As he was flying, Wang Lin's body suddenly stopped. His divine sense detected a large group of strange beasts 500 kilometers to the east. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. He immediately changed direction and headed east. He quickly crossed the distance of 500 kilometers. There were many strange beasts here. After Wang Lin appeared, he didn't say anything and pointed at his forehead. The second devil appeared and charged into the group of strange beasts. Shortly after, the black poison sword also moved, followed by Wang Lin's G realm. These attacks were like a sharp sword that killed everyone in the herd of beasts. But just at this moment, a roar came from the group of strange beasts. A giant octopus slowly rose up from the ground. Its black eyes revealed a cold light as it stared at Wang Lin. Wang Lin looked at it. This beast cultivation was comparable to the mid-stage of nascent soul. He turned around and left without another word. He had seen this scene many times along the way. Whenever there was a group of strange beasts like this, there was bound to be a high-quality spirit beast comparable to a nascent soul cultivator. Wang Lin's figure flashed, and he quickly escaped. The high-quality spirit beast let out an angry roar and immediately chased after Wang Lin. Wang Lin didn't even look back as he quickly ran away. After the spirit beast chased for a while, it hesitated and roared a few times. Then it slowly stopped and returned to the group of strange beasts. Its giant tentacles grabbed a few strange beasts and threw them into its mouth. Then it lay down on the ground and didn't move. Soon, Wang Lin locked on 7 cultivators 2,000 kilometers away. Among these cultivators, there were 3 core formation cultivators. At this moment, the 7 of them were surrounding a strange beast and attacking it with evil smiles. However, their smiles immediately froze. All they saw was a black shadow flash in front of them, and all 7 of them died. 3 of the core formation cultivators had glistening black holes in their stomachs. As for the strange beast, there was also a bloody hole in its head. But just at this moment, a low grunt came from the distance. The Poison Devil Palace has ordered that all killing is forbidden within its territory. You, stay here. Wang Lin didn't hesitate at all. The moment the old man spoke, Wang Lin quickly retreated. The person who spoke let out a cold laugh. His body suddenly disappeared and reappeared in front of Wang Lin. At the same time, he waved his right hand and a powerful force pushed forward. Wang Lin's body immediately floated backward. His eyes flashed as he stared forward. This person was a middle-aged man wearing a purple robe. His face was cold, and in a few steps, he arrived next to the 7 corpses. The person lowered his head and frowned. He stared at Wang Lin and said, "What a cruel method. Others kill people for their treasures, but you kill people for their cores." Wang Lin's eyes flashed. This person was a nascent soul cultivator. This could be seen from the aura he emitted and the teleportation just now. However, this person's cultivation level was definitely not mid-stage nascent soul. After some analysis, Wang Lin guessed that this person was most likely early-stage nascent soul. This person didn't come with good intentions. Wang Lin's eyes flashed coldly. He slapped his bag of holding, and the black poison sword flew out. There was a buzzing sound above his head, and it emitted waves of cold light. The middle-aged man revealed a look of mockery. His right hand suddenly moved and turned into a ghostly claw covered in fog. It appeared in front of Wang Lin and reached down. Wang Lin waved his right hand, and the restriction flag flew out. It immediately grew in size and covered everything within 100 kilometers. Restrictions appeared all around the flag, and the ghostly claw was surrounded by dozens of restrictions. There was a series of sizzling sounds before the ghostly claw disappeared. The middle-aged man stared at the restriction flag and let out a sneer. He waved his hand, and a purple sword flew out of his sleeve. The sword pierced through the air and shot toward Wang Lin like lightning. Wang Lin's body didn't move. His hand formed a seal, and he shouted, "Break." The restriction flag suddenly moved, and the restrictions on the flag flew out one by one, forming a black armor of restriction before Wang Lin. When the flying sword landed on the armor, countless restriction symbols began to crawl over it. In an instant, the entire flying sword was covered in countless restriction symbols. The middle-aged man frowned. He didn't think that a mere mid-stage core formation cultivator would have such a strange magical treasure. He slapped his bag of holding, and a tiger-shaped copper seal flew out. As he muttered to himself, the copper seal let out a series of rumbling sounds. Then, it began to grow in size until it was 7 or 8 meters tall. In the blink of an eye, the copper seal split in half, and a black tiger came roaring out from within. After the tiger appeared, it immediately pounced at Wang Lin. Wang Lin took 2 steps back, and his hand seal changed as he shouted, "Trap!" The moment he finished speaking, the restriction flag waved again. This time, the restriction symbols connected together to form chains that appeared from all directions and formed a cage in front of Wang Lin. The black tiger let out a miserable groan as it was bounced back. At the same time, another wall made of metal chains appeared behind the tiger. Following that, the 2 walls suddenly moved and connected with each other, forming a circle that surrounded the black tiger. All of this had happened in practically an instant. In other words, the moment the black tiger pounced over, the tiger was trapped within the chains formed by the symbols of the restriction. The tiger continued to roar inside the chains, but it was useless. The middle-aged man's expression changed for the first time. He put away his disdainful expression and stared at Wang Lin with a serious expression. He asked, Whose disciple are you? To him, the person who owned such a treasure must have a very powerful background. Or else, there was no way a completion-leveled cultivator of the intermediate stage could own such a treasure. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a trace of greed. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. The power of the restriction flag was worth the divine retribution. This was only a restriction flag with multiple attributes. If it was a single attribute, its power would be several times stronger. He coldly stared at the middle-aged man. This wasn't the right time. When he was controlling the restriction flag, the spiritual energy in his body was a bit unstable. The size of his golden core had shrunk again. If this continued, his golden core would shatter soon. Wang Lin's expression was gloomy. He coldly said, "My master is Gulan." The middle-aged man was startled. He carefully looked at Wang Lin and sneered in his heart. He didn't believe that Wang Lin was the disciple of the old devil ancient emperor. It has to be said that the old devil ancient emperor disappeared from the chaotic broken stars 200 years ago. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly widened. He stared at the item in Wang Lin's hand. In Wang Lin's hand, there was an extra bag of holding. On the bag, there was an ancient word, Lan, embroidered. Wang Lin waved his hand and the bag of holding disappeared. He looked at the middle-aged man. From his expression, he could tell that this person recognized the bag of holding. At the very least, this person had heard of it. Wang Lin slowly retreated. He changed his hand seals and quickly retreated with the restriction flag. After retreating 100 meters, he formed a restriction with his right hand and released the black tiger trapped inside the restriction flag. At this moment, Wang Lin sped up and disappeared into the distance. The middle-aged man's face was gloomy as he stared at the direction Wang Lin disappeared to. He wanted to chase after Wang Lin several times, but in the end, he stopped himself. Ignoring the bag of holding, just that flag was enough to make him dread Wang Lin, and from the looks of it, Wang Lin hadn't used his full power. Although he was confident that with his early-stage nascent soul cultivation, it shouldn't be hard for him to kill a core formation cultivator. The treasure in Wang Lin's hand was simply too strange. This made him slow down his pursuit. Moreover, he recognized the bag of holding. It was embroidered with the word Lan. If he remembered correctly, it belonged to Ancient Emperor. This kind of thing couldn't be known by normal people. He only saw it when Ancient Emperor came to the Demon Palace many years ago. Therefore, although Ancient Emperor disappeared 200 years ago, he was still famous and had many disciples. This made the middle-aged man give up on the idea of chasing after him. After Wang Lin flew far away, he quickly put away the restriction flag. Just this quick battle had consumed a lot of spiritual energy in his body and caused his Jindan to shrink. According to his calculations, he had to quickly increase his spiritual energy. Otherwise, only death awaited him. Wang Lin took out the spiritual liquid that he had accumulated in Qilin City. There were less than 100 drops in it. After drinking 10 drops, he barely stopped his Jindan from shrinking. After a moment of silence, Wang Lin sighed. He knew that if this continued, there would be no end. There was only one solution. Wang Lin gritted his teeth and activated the soul core of the Soul Devourer in his Sea of Knowledge. His consciousness suddenly shrank and concentrated on the soul core. Splitting his consciousness was something that Wang Lin had used once in the foreign battlefield to leave the Nirvana world. At that time, he had spent several years to split his consciousness into thousands of individual parts. From there, these parts burrowed out of the tiny cracks in space and finally reached the goal of leaving the Nirvana world. At that time, a small part of his consciousness hadn't been retrieved. Until now, its whereabouts were still unknown. Since then, Wang Lin had a deep fear of splitting his consciousness. He knew that if he lost too much after splitting his consciousness, he would likely be much weaker after the final fusion. He might not even be able to form a complete consciousness again. But now, if he used the normal method of killing the Soul Devourer and snatching the Jindan, he wouldn't be able to satisfy the absorption of the heavenly tribulation threads in his body. Therefore, Wang Lin could only take a risk and split his consciousness again. Luckily, he had already formed a soul core this time. As such, the danger of splitting his consciousness was greatly reduced. After all, the first time he split his consciousness, it didn't have any offensive power. It was just a chaotic consciousness. But now, because of the appearance of a soul devourer's soul core, the consciousness that he split was, in a sense, the wandering souls of the nirvana world. The only difference was that its form was slightly different. His consciousness, which was more than 10 times stronger than that of a normal core formation cultivator, gathered on the soul core. Instantly, it turned from 1 to 10, from 10 to 100, from 100 to 1,000. Strands of consciousness came out of Wang Lin's body like crazy. One could see that these strands of consciousness had the form of red lightning bolts. This had a lot to do with the G realm. In fact, these strands of consciousness were strands of G realm consciousness. Thousands of strands of G realm consciousness came out of Wang Lin's body in the form of red lightning bolts. They spread in all directions and disappeared without a trace. As for Wang Lin's original consciousness, it was left inside his body. Right now, Wang Lin's consciousness was extremely weak. Wang Lin slapped his bag of holding with his right hand, and the black poisonous sword flew out. After digging a big hole in the ground, Wang Lin sat down in a lotus position. He put away the flying sword and took out the restriction flag. He took a deep breath and took it out. The black flag of the restriction flag began to move without any wind. Its size began to swell until it was more than 100 feet tall. With a shake of the flag, it completely surrounded the area within 100 miles. At the same time, one after another forbidding formation appeared from the flag and landed in the surroundings. Following this, 9 grayish-white giant forbidding symbols appeared from the flag and floated in the surroundings motionlessly. After taking out the restriction flag, Wang Lin took a deep breath and calmed himself down to digest the golden core inside his body. As for his soul fragments, as long as they met a cultivator below the nascent soul stage, they would kill them and take their golden core. Time slowly passed. Every time a soul fragment obtained a golden core, it would fly back to where Wang Lin was. After leaving the golden core behind, it would go out again. As a result, the already chaotic sea of devils became even more chaotic due to the frequent killings. More and more people joined in. Even some of the medium-sized sects became restless. 2 days later, Wang Lin was sitting in the lotus position inside the restriction flag. His face was extremely pale. The golden core inside his body had shrunk to the size of a fingernail, and his cultivation level had dropped to the early stage of core formation. The golden cores he obtained in these past few days were all gathered in another location inside his body. He was going to give the divine retribution a fatal blow at a critical moment. Wang Lin's voice was hoarse. His hand formed a seal, and he shouted, "Soul fragments, withdraw." Suddenly, no matter where his soul fragments were scattered, their bodies trembled, and they quickly returned. Inside the sea of devils, one could only see red lightning flashing across the sky. All of these lightning bolts were heading towards the same location. As the red lightning entered the restriction flag and entered Wang Lin's body, the spiritual energy inside his body became larger and larger. Finally, when all of his soul fragments returned, Wang Lin's eyes became cold. He controlled the spiritual energy inside his body and charged at the divine retribution. 3 days later, within 50 kilometers of where Wang Lin was, the restriction flag suddenly shrank into a small flag and landed in the hand of a white-haired figure. Wang Lin waved his right hand and put the restriction flag into his bag of holding. His face was no longer pale and revealed a hint of blood. In these 3 days of time, he wasn't able to force the divine retribution out of his body. Instead, he used his spiritual energy to wrap around the divine retribution and temporarily solve the crisis of his golden core. At the same time, he used the spiritual energy he obtained to strengthen his golden core. Not only did his cultivation level not decrease, but it actually increased. He was now at the peak of the late stage of core formation, the pseudo-nascent soul stage. If he wanted to completely get rid of the divine retribution, according to Wang Lin's analysis, there was only one way, and that was to reach the nascent soul stage. That way, he could use the jade hunchback Meng left in his bag of holding called the poison transfer technique to transfer the divine retribution into someone else's body and completely solve this problem. Wang Lin pondered a bit and revealed a decisive look. He closed his eyes and sensed the existence of the devil Su Ligua. Because the distance was too far, he could only feel the devil's general location. Soon, he opened his eyes and quickly flew west. This time, in order to increase his speed, Wang Lin used the Earth Escape technique that he hadn't used in a long time. As a result, his speed increased greatly. The only weakness of the Earth Escape technique was that it consumed a lot of spiritual energy. This was why Wang Lin didn't want to use this technique before solving the problem with his body. His speed was very fast, and his divine sense was constantly sensing Su Ligua's position. Finally, on the 7th day, he arrived at the ruins of the Qilan city, 3,000 miles away. This place was the mountain peak that he had agreed to meet on that day. He could feel that the devil Su Ligua was here. This was indeed the case. The moment Wang Lin arrived at the top of the mountain, Su Ligua came out from the pavilion and entered between his eyebrows. At the same time, Qiu Saiping's figure appeared inside the pavilion. He was in a sorry state, and his breathing was unstable. Wang Lin entered the pavilion, sat down on the stone chair, and observed Qiu Saiping. Qiu Saiping wryly smiled and said, "Fellow cultivator, I have waited here for you for more than half a month. If it wasn't for the fact that I believe you are not the kind of person to break your promise, I would have left a long time ago." Wang Lin revealed an apologetic expression and said, "There has been a change in the Sea of Devils, causing many cultivators to kill each other. The various sects are also participating in the fight to divide up the cities. As a result, my journey has been delayed, and I have made fellow cultivator wait for a long time." Qiu Saiping let out a sigh and wryly smiled. "Forget it. I have already killed a lot of people with bad intentions and have gained a lot. Fellow cultivator, how about we go to that place now?" Wang Lin stood up and nodded. "That's good. Fellow cultivator, please lead the way." Qiu Saiping's eyes lit up and he smiled. "Fellow cultivator, since we have reached an agreement, we can be considered allies. Can you tell me your name?" Wang Lin looked at this person and said, "Wang Lin." Qiu Saiping clasped his hands and said, "Brother Wang, that place is very far from here. If you don't mind, you could take my cloud boat." As he spoke, he slapped his bag of holding with his right hand, causing a huge white boat to appear in midair. This boat was about 10 feet long, and there were all kinds of spirit beast carvings on it. There was also a statue of a bird on the bow. This statue was very lifelike and looked very lifelike. Qiu Saiping's body moved, and he gently landed on the boat. He turned around and looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin scanned the boat with his divine sense. When he didn't find anything strange, he stepped onto the boat. Qiu Saiping crossed his hands and cast a spiritual art, imprinting it into the bird statue at the bow of the ship. Immediately, the ship trembled and quickly moved forward. This boat was a bit slower than a flying sword, but it didn't need to be powered by spiritual energy, so it was quite easy. Wang Lin stood on the boat and saw a thin barrier of light around the boat, blocking the black rain that had been falling for half a month. Occasionally, muffled thunder would come from the sky mixed with the rain, giving off the feeling of 10,000 strands of thunder falling in a single night. Qiu Saiping slowly asked, "Brother Wang, what do you think of this boat?" Wang Lin nodded and praised, "Very good. This boat was crafted by me. Brother Wang, aside from my slight research into restrictions, my favorite hobby is crafting tools. It took me several years to gather enough materials to craft this boat." Qiu Saiping laughed and said with some emotion. Just at this moment, thunder roared in the sky and a bolt of lightning descended from the sky. Although it was very far from the Devil Cultivation Basin, it was still possible to feel the power of the heavens. This kind of lightning was several times stronger than the lightning created by a cultivator's technique. It was not something that could be created by a cultivator's technique. Qiu Saiping raised his head to look at the dark clouds above the Devil Cultivation Basin and muttered to himself, "I was born in the Sea of Devils and have cultivated for more than 200 years. However, this is the first time I've seen the real sky in half a month." Just as Wang Lin was about to speak, his eyes suddenly narrowed as he stared at the sky in the distance. He saw a series of rumbles coming from that direction, and a giant turtle slowly appeared in the sky. An old man stood on top of the turtle. He pointed at the sky and cursed nonstop. Even though he was very far away, his curses could still be heard without missing a single word. I'm going to F***CK, you damned heavenly tribulation. I haven't finished yet. Now I'm going to tell you your 37,863 crimes. 105 Chui Gung divine weapon. Very ruthless, but it won't crush me. I'll eat it. In addition, during this period of time, any flowers, gifts, votes, recommendations, monthly votes, I'll thank you very much. Chapter 208. Wang Lin frowned. His gaze fell on the giant turtle the old man was riding. From the aura it gave off, it was very similar to the desolate dragon he encountered in the passage to the land of the ancient god. Most importantly, this tortoise looked exactly the same as a certain creature in the ancient god's memory. Black tortoise! Cho Saiping's eyes widened and his pupils shrank. His expression changed and his hands quickly formed seals. He shot out several rays of spiritual energy that landed on the statue at the front of the ship. Suddenly, the entire ship slowly turned around. It was going to go around the statue, so it wouldn't meet the crazy old man. Black tortoise! Wang Lin stared at the turtle for a while, and his expression sank. In the ancient god's memories, there was no such thing as a black tortoise. There was only a creature called the weeping beast. This beast fed on spiritual energy, and its strongest attack was its cry. If a normal cultivator heard one cry, the spiritual energy in their body would collapse, and they would become food for the beast. The old man who was cursing took out a dirty gourd from his bosom and took a big gulp before continuing to curse. He didn't even look at the ship Wang Lin and Chiu Saiping were on. Chiu Saiping's forehead was covered in sweat as he carefully controlled the ship to go around the old man. It wasn't until they were far away that he let out a sigh of relief. He turned around and said to Wang Lin, "This person can use the desolate beast black tortoise as a mount. His cultivation level must be far higher than we can imagine. It looks like the change in the Sea of Devils has attracted a lot of old monsters. Luckily, he didn't mean to make things difficult for us. Otherwise, we would have been in trouble." Wang Lin looked at Chiu Saiping and said, with a gloomy expression, "Not necessarily." Chiu Saiping was startled. At this moment, Wang Lin pointed forward and Chiu Saiping's expression changed. He saw what Wang Lin was pointing at in the scene he had just seen appeared again. An old man, standing on the turtle, raised his head and cursed. Chiu Saiping was silent for a while before he squeezed out the words, "Formation?" Wang Lin ignored Chiu Saiping and went to the bow of the ship. He looked around. He had felt that something was wrong. When the ship turned around, there seemed to be a slight fluctuation coming from the four legs of the weeping beast. After a while, Wang Lin said in a flat tone, "This is not a formation. This is some kind of restriction." Chiu Saiping's expression sank as he looked around with a frown. Then, he smiled bitterly and said, "With our cultivations, this senior shouldn't have specially arranged a restriction, right?" Wang Lin didn't say anything. Instead, he used his divine sense to observe the surroundings. In his opinion, the old man on top of the weeping beast would definitely not stop them from advancing for no reason. There must be some sort of twist to this. Perhaps the old man was tired of cursing, so he took another big gulp of wine from the gourd and sat down. At the same time, his gaze swept around and landed on Chiu Saiping's boat. The old man reached out with his right hand and the boat quickly flew towards him. In the blink of an eye, the boat was already 100 meters away. Chiu Saiping quickly bowed with a respectful expression and said, "Junior Chiu Saiping greets Senior." The old man's eyes widened and he said, "You know me?" Chiu Saiping was startled and quickly said, "Junior, I don't know you. So how do you know me? If you don't know me, then why are you calling me Senior? Am I that old? How about this? I'll tell you about what happened when I was 3 years old. Once I finish talking about the past few thousand years, then you'll know me. Speaking of which, when I was 3 years old, once the old man opened his mouth, he went on and on. After a long time, the old man stopped and drank another mouthful of wine from the gourd. After a long time, the old man finally stopped and drank another mouthful of wine from the gourd. The gourd was already empty. The old man curled his lips and muttered, "If I had known that I would talk so much today, I would have prepared more wine. Now, there's no more. You two, come with me to get some wine. On the way, I'll tell you about my experiences when I was 75 years old." Chiu Saiping's face twitched. He quickly took out a few jars of wine from his bag of holding and said, Sana, Junior has some wine. Please take it. There's no need to buy more. The old man's expression became happy. He waved his hand, and the jars in Chiu Saiping's hand disappeared. Wang Lin remained silent. He couldn't see through the old man's cultivation at all. Also, he wasn't good at chatting with people, so it was best to leave this matter to Chiu Saiping. Also, why was this person blocking them? Wang Lin had been pondering this for a long time. He gradually realized that it had to do with the divine retribution or all the killing he had done in the past few days. Of course, it was also possible that the person the old man was after wasn't Wang Lin, but Chiu Saiping. However, from Wang Lin's expression, he had a feeling that the old man had stopped them not because of Chiu Saiping, but because of him, Wang Lin. The old man removed the mud from the jar and smelled it. He laughed and said, A fine wine brewed from the broken cloud fruit. Not bad. Little guy, you fit the old man's taste. How about it? How about becoming my disciple? Wang Lin's heart sank. This old man wouldn't say something like this for no reason. There must be a reason behind it. This time, Chiu Saiping was completely stunned. If the old man had been a chatterbox before, then now he was practically a madman. Who would accept a disciple like this? For a moment, Chiu Saiping felt like his neck was being strangled. He couldn't say a word. After a long time, he smiled bitterly and said, Senior, the old man rolled his eyes and said, What, you don't want to? Then forget it. You will be the old man's disciple. How about it? The old man turned to look at Wang Lin and said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Wang Lin's eyes were calm. He had already guessed that the old man would eventually lead the matter to him, so he respectfully said, I already have a sect. What sect? The old man's smile was still the same, but from what Wang Lin could see, there was a hint of coldness in the old man's eyes. He was even more certain of his guess. This time, the person the old man was after was him, Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression was normal as he respectfully replied, State of Zhao, Hung Yu sect. The old man gave Wang Lin a meaningful look. His smile became even colder, and he said, In 3 days, you killed more than 1,000 core formation cultivators. Little guy, you sure are generous. The moment these words came out, Chiu Saiping's expression suddenly changed. He took a few steps back and looked at Wang Lin with a look of disbelief. Wang Lin's expression was normal, but his heart skipped a beat. At this moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. From the moment the old man appeared until now, all the things he said flashed through his mind. He took a deep breath and respectfully said, Junior is willing to take Senior as his master. The old man was startled. After staring at Wang Lin for a while, the coldness in his eyes slowly dissipated. He let out a laugh and waved his right hand. A restriction appeared between Wang Lin's eyebrows, and he smiled. Good. You are indeed smart. The old man will accept you as his disciple. Come with me. After the restriction entered his body, it immediately turned into a giant lotus. With Wang Lin's meridians as the trunk, his blood vessels as the leaves, and his blood as the nutrients, it condensed inside his body. Wang Lin's expression didn't change at all as he said, Disciple has an appointment with fellow cultivator Chiu. I need to help him with something. I ask Master to give me a few more days. The old man's eyes became serious as he looked at Chiu Saiping. Chiu Saiping struggled a bit. Then he clenched his teeth and respectfully nodded. Senior, there is indeed such a thing. I hope Senior can make an exception. The old man rolled his eyes and said, I'll give you 1 month. In 1 month, go to any treasure refining pavilion in the Sea of Devils and tell the old man that you're son Dian. The old man will know immediately. With that, the old man looked at Wang Lin once more and let out a laugh. He stepped on the beast and flew off into the distance. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Chiu Saiping pondered a bit and looked at Wang Lin with dread. He didn't ask what the old man was talking about, but said, Brother Wang, I'll speed up the boat. In about 2 days, we will arrive at that place. I'll leave everything regarding the restriction to Brother Wang. Wang Lin nodded and immediately sat down in the lotus position at the back of the boat. He pointed to his brow, and the devil Su Ligua and the second devil appeared. At the same time, he slapped his bag of holding and the restriction flag flew out. This time, under his control, the restriction flag only covered his body. Shortly after, Wang Lin's cold voice came out from the restriction flag. Fellow cultivator Chiu, Wang needs to go into closed-door cultivation for 2 days. Please don't disturb him. Chiu Siping immediately agreed. After looking at the restriction flag, he withdrew his gaze and focused on controlling the boat to increase its speed. 2 days later, the two of them arrived at a desolate mountain range. Chiu Siping looked back at where Wang Lin was cultivating. After pondering for a bit, he didn't disturb Wang Lin. Instead, he sat down and quietly waited. A few hours later, the restriction flag around Wang Lin began to tremble and shrink. Finally, it turned into a small flag and was put into Wang Lin's bag of holding. Wang Lin's face was a bit pale. The old man's lotus restriction wasn't very tight, so he had already broken a portion of it. If he wanted to completely break it, it would take some time. However, he had completely understood the function of the restriction in these 2 days. The restriction had a location function, and according to Wang Lin's analysis, it should be very wide. When Chiu Siping saw Wang Lin come out of closed-door cultivation, he immediately stood up and said, "Brother Wang, the cave is below us." Wang Lin nodded and looked down. Then his body floated off the boat and floated in the air. Chiu Siping's right hand formed a seal and landed on the boat. The boat quickly shrank until it was the size of a palm and was put into his bag of holding. With that done, Chiu Siping quickly descended. After looking around for a bit, he landed on a stone platform in the middle of the mountain range. He waved his hand, and a black stone appeared. He spat out a mouthful of gold core chi, causing the black stone to shine with a black light. Chiu Siping threw the stone into the air. Shortly after, Chiu Siping's hand formed seals, and he placed them on the stone. The stone began to shine brightly and slowly floated toward the mountain. As the rock got closer and closer to the mountain, ripples began to appear in the mountain and spread out in all directions. From the water ripples, one could see that there was a semicircular cave inside. Chiu Siping took a deep breath and looked at Wang Lin. Wang Lin pondered for a bit. His divine sense flashed, and he stared at the ripples for a while. His hands moved quickly, and 3 illusionary circles flew out from his hands and landed on the ripples on the mountain. At this moment, the ripples on the mountain began to tremble violently. Countless bumps appeared on the surface of the ripples. These bumps kept moving, becoming smaller and larger. It was a very strange sight. Wang Lin didn't even blink. His hands moved quickly and created one illusionary circle after another. Suddenly, one of the bubbles on the ripples burst. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and a circle of illusionary circles flew out and landed on the spot where the bubble burst. However, after that, even more bubbles burst. Wang Lin's hand moved quickly and created many afterimages of restrictions. He placed the next restriction at each point of the bubble. However, the further he went, the more bubbles there were. Gradually, Wang Lin's speed was unable to keep up. Chiu Siping had been nervous the whole time. When he saw that Wang Lin's speed was unable to keep up, he couldn't help but feel anxious. He slapped his storage bag and a black stone flew out. Chiu Siping's hands moved quickly and flicked one of the stones. It landed on one of the bubbles that Wang Lin didn't have time to fill. Chiu Siping's eyes revealed a hint of pain, but his expression soon became serious again. His hands moved again and again. Every time there was a hole that Wang Lin didn't have time to fill, Chiu Siping would immediately fill it up. Wang Lin's eyes flickered when he saw this. His hand slowed down a bit and purposely left some bubbles, forcing Chiu Siping to fill them up with stones. Finally, when all 10 of Chiu Siping's stones disappeared, Wang Lin's hands moved even faster and flicked out a few more restrictions. With a bang, the ripples on the mountain suddenly split open, revealing a path. Chiu Siping's face lit up, and he quickly charged in. Wang Lin's eyes flickered as he followed behind. The cave wasn't big. After entering, there were 4 stone rooms with a lot of dust. When Wang Lin entered, he immediately saw Chiu Siping standing outside one of the stone rooms with a ferocious expression. Wang Lin didn't pay attention to him. After looking around, he found that all 4 of the stone rooms had restrictions. His gaze landed on the stone room on the left. After looking at it for a while, he found that the restriction on it was the easiest to break. He pondered for a bit, then without a word, he waved his hand and condensed spiritual energy into his hands. He created a circle of illusions that landed on the stone room. The stone room suddenly trembled, and the stone wall slowly rose up. Wang Lin looked inside, and his eyes suddenly widened. This stone room was empty except for a circular formation on the ground. This formation looked very old, but after Wang Lin carefully examined it, he found that the symbols and materials used to make up the formation were still intact. Also, Wang Lin immediately recognized this transfer array. It was an ancient transfer array that could travel at least 1 million kilometers. Qiu Siping turned around and calmly said, "This is an ancient transfer array. Back when my master found this cave, he found this array. Although this array has never been damaged by wind or rain because it is inside the stone room, it still needs top-quality spirit stones. I haven't heard of anyone in the Sea of Devils who has top-quality spirit stones, so this formation has never been opened." Qiu Siping looked at the formation and calmly said. Wang Lin didn't speak, but his heart was pounding. It has to be said that after he left the land of the lucky god, what he wanted the most was information about the transfer array. However, in Qilin City, he didn't find much. His original plan was to find a place to repair the transfer array himself after he found the information. However, if there was an intact transfer array, it would make up for the lack of information about the transfer array. The only pity was that he didn't know where the other end of the transfer array was. Qiu Siping pointed at the other stone rooms and said, "This is the second stone room on the left. There are some books inside, but they are empty. I took them all back then." With that, his right hand formed a seal and landed on the stone wall. Suddenly, the stone wall was lifted up, revealing an empty stone chamber. This is the second stone room on the right. It contains the remains of the ancient cultivator, but the remains are gone. They were used by my teacher to refine pills. With that, he formed another seal, and the stone room opened. Sure enough, there was nothing inside. Qiu Siping looked at Wang Lin and slowly said, "As for my teacher and senior apprentice brother Gue, she's nascent souls. They are in the first stone room on the right. You and I can choose one, and my teacher's nascent soul will belong to Brother Wang. Brother Wang, although we had some misunderstandings at the beginning, now that we've come this far, I believe the misunderstandings have been cleared up." Wang Lin's eyes were calm as he said, "If your analysis is wrong and the two nascent souls haven't returned, what will happen?" Qiu Siping shook his head and said, "Brother Wang, don't worry. I'm certain that both of them are in Gue Shi's state. Also, just in case, I prepared something." With that, he took a deep breath and took out a black incense stick from his bag of holding. He touched it with his right hand, and the incense stick lit up, emitting the smell of sandalwood. Heart enchantment incense. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He immediately recognized this item. This heart enchantment incense was a type of alchemy material. When combined with other medicines, it could stabilize the mind and help resist external devils. However, when used alone, especially when a cultivator with an external devil inside their body smelled this incense, their injuries would worsen and the external devil inside their body would be like the heavens were helping them. Qiu Siping nodded and calmly said, "There is no anchor. Brother Wang, are you at ease now? However, this restriction is a bit dangerous. Brother Wang, you need to be careful." With that, he took a few steps back to make room. Wang Lin stared at the stone room for a while. He waved his right hand, and a restriction shadow flew out and landed on the stone wall. However, just at this moment, a giant beast head came out of the stone room. It let out a roar and charged toward Wang Linxiang. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he slapped his bag of holding and the restriction flag flew out. He shouted, "Devour!" Suddenly, a giant hand came out of the restriction flag, grabbed the beast's head, and pulled it into the flag. Shortly after, Wang Lin's hands began to form seals. Every time a seal landed on the stone wall, a beast head would appear. Slowly, more and more beast heads appeared, but the restriction showed no signs of opening. Qiu Siping frowned slightly. After a moment of silence, he took out 4 more black stones from his bag of holding. After looking at them with a pained expression, he pointed at them with both hands and then suddenly threw them in 4 different directions, each of them landing on a stone wall. Qiu Siping shouted, "Brother Wang, I can only suppress the beast head for 10 breaths of time. Quickly, Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He grabbed the restriction flag and waved it. Suddenly, thousands of restrictions flew out and shot toward the stone wall. Wang Lin wasn't confident that he could break the restriction in a short amount of time. Thus, he chose the second method, which was to break the restriction by force. Thousands of restrictions landed on the stone wall one by one. Suddenly, countless beast heads appeared on the stone wall. These beast heads struggled to jump out, but the 4 stones on the stone wall gave off waves of gentle light, preventing these beast heads from coming out. At this moment, the restriction from the restriction flag landed on the cave, causing a series of explosions. Large amounts of dust fell from the cave, and the entire cave began to shake as if it was going to collapse. At the same time, the moment the restriction on the right side of the stone wall was broken, 2 dim yellow lights flew out and tried to escape through the hole. Just at this moment, the 2 yellow lights suddenly slowed down and began to wobble. The light inside them became dimmer and dimmer until it looked like it was about to dissipate. It was obvious that the fragrance from the bewitching incense had an effect. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. The moment the 2 rays of yellow light flew out, he clearly saw that there were 2 nascent souls with their eyes closed and their bodies almost transparent inside the 2 rays of yellow light. Also, from how weak they could collapse at any moment. With the help of the bewitching incense, these 2 nascent souls were on the verge of collapsing. Wang Lin and Xiu Siping attacked at almost the same time. Wang Lin's speed was 1 step faster. He grabbed the slightly stronger nascent soul and, without a word, charged out of the cave. The moment he charged out, the collapse of the Immortal's cave began. The sound of things collapsing could be heard. Xiu Siping also charged out. As soon as he appeared, he clasped hands toward Wang Lin and then hurried away, afraid that Wang Lin would attack him. Wang Lin grabbed the nascent soul and slapped his forehead. Su Ligua appeared. When he saw the nascent soul, his eyes filled with greed. Wang Lin let out a cold snort, causing Su Ligua to tremble. A look of fear appeared on his face as he obediently wrapped up the nascent soul and returned to Wang Lin's sea of consciousness. After doing all of this, Wang Lin looked back at the collapsed Immortal's cave and then at Xiu Siping, who had already flown off into the distance. His eyes flickered, and he pondered for a moment. In the end, he gave up on the idea of chasing after Su Ligua. After all, a nascent soul was the limit of what his divine sense could handle. If he let another in, it would be easy for the devil to lose control and be possessed. Wang Lin's eyes flickered. He was very excited. After devouring the nascent soul, he was confident that he would succeed in reaching the nascent soul stage. He took a deep breath, suppressed the anticipation in his heart, and then sped away. A day later, Wang Lin stopped in a desert. He looked around. On the way here, he had chosen a few desolate places to fly. Within a radius of 5,000 kilometers, it could be said that there were few people or beasts. Wang Lin's eyes flashed, and he took a step forward, sinking his body into the ground. 2,000 feet underground, he stopped. After opening up a simple Immortal's cave, Wang Lin sat down cross-legged. He took a deep breath, then tapped his forehead, causing Su Ligua to fly out. Wang Lin glanced at Su Ligua, and the devil obediently stretched out its body, revealing a nascent soul that was so weak it looked like it was about to collapse. It floated off to the side, staring at Wang Lin. Wang Lin didn't even look at Su Ligua. He closed his eyes, and after a few breaths, he opened them again. His eyes were filled with determination as he grabbed the nascent soul and swallowed it. As soon as the nascent soul entered his body, the ancient god tactic began to circulate. Like a giant millstone, it immediately disintegrated the nascent soul and released a large amount of spiritual energy. This spiritual energy flowed through every meridian in Wang Lin's body. Wang Lin immediately stopped circulating the ancient god tactic to prevent the nascent soul's spiritual energy from being used on body tempering. Just like that, under his control, the spiritual energy quickly flowed through his meridians and into his golden core. His golden core suddenly expanded. Its color became darker and darker, and its size continued to increase. Finally, cracks appeared on its surface. Signs of reaching the nascent soul stage slowly appeared in his body. But, At this moment, within his sea of consciousness, the G-realm divine sense turned into lightning. For the first time, without Wang Lin's control, it began to move on its own. It quickly rushed out of his sea of consciousness and broke through the Violet Palace realm. It instantly appeared inside Wang Lin's body and crashed down on his golden core. Wang Lin's eyes widened. No matter how hard he tried, the G-realm divine sense couldn't be controlled. The moment it hit his golden core, the golden core exploded. This explosion occurred within Wang Lin's body. The spiritual energy released from his golden core flowed through his meridians and collided with the spiritual energy from devouring the nascent soul. As a result, the shockwave from the collision of the two spiritual energies rushed out of Wang Lin's meridians and swept through his body like crazy. Wang Lin's body was thrown into the air and landed heavily on the ground. At the same time, he coughed out several mouthfuls of blood, and his face immediately turned pale. He struggled to sit up. At this moment, Wang Lin's eyes were lifeless, and he silently pondered. After a long time, his eyes slowly regained some spirit. He closed his eyes, looked inside his body, and began to laugh like crazy. This laughter lasted for a long time, and in the end, no matter how one listened to it, there was a deep sense of grief and indignation in his laughter. G-realm divine sense. G-realm divine sense. G-realm divine sense. Wang Lin's eyes were red as he muttered to himself. The golden core in his body didn't completely explode, but it shrank to the size of a fingernail. Long ago, Wang Lin had speculated whether the existence of the G-realm would affect his nascent soul. At the time, he wasn't completely sure, but what happened just now was like a blow to his head. It made him completely understand that the biggest obstacle in his nascent soul stage was the G-realm divine sense. As the saying goes, success comes from the G-realm, and failure comes from the G-realm. But Wang Lin urgently wanted to know why all of this was happening. Why did the G-realm divine sense uncontrollably attack the golden core in the instant of nascent soul formation? He bitterly took a deep breath and closed his eyes to meditate, nursing his body. 3 days later, Wang Lin opened his eyes and jumped out of the cave. After leaving the cave, he used his fastest speed to search for a city. Half a month later, Wang Lin had visited almost all of the surrounding cities. Of course, he didn't go to the artifact refining pavilion. In these markets, he didn't find anything related to the G-realm. In his confusion, Wang Lin suddenly thought of the cave that Xiu Siping was in. It was densely packed with ancient books, and many of them were in the form of bamboo slips. From this, it could be seen that they were extremely ancient. If there was even the slightest fluctuation of magic power, they would be destroyed, so they couldn't be copied onto jade slips. Thinking of this, Wang Lin's body quickly moved, and he quickly headed toward the location of the cave that Xiu Siping had gone to. 5 days later, Wang Lin arrived at the original location. At this moment, he didn't care if Xiu Siping was there or not. If he tried to stop him, then Wang Lin would definitely kill him. Although Xiu Siping had obtained a nascent soul formation wasn't something that could be completed in half a month. So Wang Lin wasn't worried about Xiu Siping. In the wasteland, Wang Lin's body sank into the ground. Soon, he found the other person's cave. As for the restrictions outside the cave, they weren't difficult for him. After breaking through them, he successfully entered the cave. Wang Lin swept out with his divine sense and found that Xiu Siping wasn't in the cave. Without any hesitation, he quickly walked toward the stone room filled with ancient books. It took Wang Lin a bit of effort to break the protective restrictions of the stone room. 6 hours later, he broke them and entered the stone room. After entering, Wang Lin took a deep breath. He slowly calmed down and began to flip through the books. Most of the bamboo slips contained descriptions of restrictions. Wang Lin scanned through all of them, but he didn't find anything related to the G-realm. Wang Lin's heart sank, and he continued to flip through the books. Suddenly, his gaze landed on a bamboo slip. This bamboo slip looked extremely ancient, and there were even some cracks on it. After picking it up, Wang Lin opened it and his body trembled. He immediately went to the stone table, put down the bamboo slip, and slowly unfolded it. The front part of the bamboo slip was mostly filled with descriptions of restrictions. Only the last part of the bamboo slip had a row of small words carved on it. In the cultivation world, There is a mutation of spiritual energy that can produce a mysterious power called the G realm. I have studied this power for many years and left some of it in my heart for future generations. This mysterious power called the G realm, in my opinion, is a different kind of heaven's retribution. Otherwise, it would be impossible for cultivators of the same level to die in one blow. Only heaven's retribution has this kind of power. The end of the G realm is something that many researchers like me believe is the nascent soul stage. However, after looking through historical records, I found an interesting phenomenon. First of all, I have to say that there are no records of anyone possessing the G realm in history. However, from some clues, I found a few similar cultivators who possessed the G realm. Of these people, some stopped at the core formation stage, some stopped at the nascent soul stage, and some stopped at the soul formation stage. It can be said that there is no pattern to this, and it all depends on one's luck. In reality, my breakthrough in the G realm is all thanks to one person. I can't tell you his name or origin, but this person is the first G realm cultivator I've ever met. His cultivation level was the nascent soul stage. This person wanted to break through the nascent soul stage and reach the soul formation stage, so he sought my help. But in the end, I failed. Wang Lin was immersed in it and read it word by word. After a long time, he raised his head and his eyes revealed a hint of confusion. According to the records on the bamboo, Wang Lin immediately determined that the end of the G realm would be the core formation stage. Otherwise, there would be no way he would lose control of the G realm the moment he reached the nascent soul stage. As a result, his cultivation level would stop at the late stage of core formation, and he would never be able to break through again. This was something Wang Lin couldn't accept no matter what. If he didn't have a breakthrough in his cultivation, then the hatred that had tormented him for 400 years would never be released, and Sidhu then would never wake up. All of this would end at this moment. Tung Huayuan would still be alive, and Wang Lin would have no chance to get his revenge. Unless he had to carefully hide and never return to Zhao, Tung Huayuan would never let him go. All of his dreams from before had gone to waste at this moment. The power of the G realm, the defeat of the G realm. Wang Lin clenched his fist, and his eyes were filled with unwillingness. If he wanted to reach the nascent soul stage, then he would have to give up on the G realm. Only by doing so would he be able to reach the nascent soul stage. This was a very difficult choice. The person on the bamboo had thought of a way for the nascent soul cultivator to help him, and that was to dissipate his cultivation. When he dissipated his cultivation, his G realm would also dissipate. This was the only way to break free from the G realm and break through again. In the end, the nascent soul cultivator didn't choose this method. Now this difficult choice fell into Wang Lin's hands. If he didn't give up on the G realm, then he would never be able to break through. Every time he tried to form his nascent soul, he would be stopped by the G realm. But if he gave up, then the 400 years of hard work he had put in would hit rock bottom, and he would have to cultivate again. Also, during this period of time, he would be in the sea of devils, which was filled with danger. It was very likely that he would be killed before he could recover his cultivation. After a long time, Wang Lin's eyes revealed a decisive look. He took a deep breath, put down the bamboo, and slowly walked out of the cave. The first thing he had to do was completely get rid of the lotus restriction on his body. Today it was 9,000 words again. Please vote. Chapter 209. Only by completely removing the lotus restriction would Wang Lin be able to carry out his plan. After walking out of the cave, he took a deep breath and his eyes flashed with coldness. After pondering for a bit, Wang Lin's body suddenly moved. He immediately sank into the ground and used the earth escape technique to escape into the distance. A few days later, Wang Lin arrived at the cave that was tens of thousands of feet underground. There, he sat down cross-legged and slapped his storage bag. Suddenly, the restriction flag flew out. After activating the flag, the cave was immediately surrounded by thousands of intersecting restrictions. Wang Lin took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. He moved the chaotic spiritual energy in his body and slowly let it flow through his meridians. Time quickly passed. After he adjusted his spiritual energy, he slowly merged it into his golden core and restored the circulation of spiritual energy in his body. Gradually, his golden core returned to normal, and his cultivation level once again reached the peak of the late-stage core formation stage, the pseudo-nascent soul stage. At the same time, Wang Lin immediately cut off the spiritual energy in his meridians. He hesitated for a bit and decisively controlled the spiritual energy in his body to attack the lotus restriction inside his body. A month ago, when his G-realm spiritual sense had attacked his golden core, the spiritual power within his body had produced an explosive impact. The lotus restriction had been affected by it, and there were already signs of loosening in many places. This time, under Wang Lin's intentional attack, the lotus restriction suddenly loosened. 3 days later, Wang Lin, who had his eyes closed the entire time, suddenly opened them. His hands quickly pointed at his chest a few times. Every time his fingers touched his body, a ripple of spiritual energy would appear on his fingertips. Slowly, as his hands moved faster and faster, several bright spots suddenly appeared on Wang Lin's chest. These bright spots clearly came from his body and were revealed through his skin. Very quickly, the bright spots increased and gradually formed the shape of a lotus in front of his chest. Finally, Wang Lin let out a low shout. He placed his hands on his chest and slowly pushed them forward. The bright spots slowly came out of his body and intertwined with each other. It was like a white lotus that slowly separated from his body. Even when these spots of light were 3 inches away from his body, there were still traces of silk-like tails on those spots of light that were connected to his body. Beads of sweat the size of beans appeared on Wang Lin's forehead. His entire body was drenched in sweat, but in order to completely force out the lotus restriction, he gritted his teeth and let out a low roar. His hands suddenly pushed forward. Immediately, the specks of light, along with their thread-like tails, all drilled out of Wang Lin's body. With a push, they floated forward. Wang Lin's eyes flickered as he quickly slapped his storage bag. A small flying beast flew out from his storage bag and slammed into the lotus barrier. Immediately afterward, the lotus restriction was like a man-eating monster. It quickly shrank and enveloped the small beast. After flickering a few times, it completely sank into the small beast's body and disappeared. Only now did Wang Lin let out a sigh of relief. His eyes became cold as he pointed at the small beast's forehead. The small beast let out a series of cries and quickly flew out of the cave without looking back. The restrictions surrounding the cave opened up a path when the small beast flew by. Even the dirt underground opened up a path under Wang Lin's control. The small beast's path was unobstructed. After it appeared on the ground, it quickly flew off into the distance. Wang Lin let out a cold smile. Although he didn't know what the old man's goal was, he knew that it wasn't anything good. Now that the lotus restriction had been removed and it was transplanted into the small beast's body, if the old man wanted to find it, then he would go look for the small beast. However, Wang Lin knew that this kind of small trick would only buy him a bit more time. It wouldn't be able to fool the old man for a long time. However, what Wang Lin needed the most right now was time. He took a deep breath and charged out of the Immortal's Cave. At the same time, he made a grasping motion with his right hand to put away the restriction flag. Then he sped away. Wang Lin knew that he couldn't stay in the Sea of Devils any longer. Otherwise, there would be a lot of trouble. If he could reach the nascent soul stage according to his original plan, then he would be unstoppable in the Sea of Devils. Aside from a few soul formation cultivators, he wouldn't have to be afraid of anyone. However, something unexpected happened when he broke through to the nascent soul stage. As a result, he had to change his plan a bit. After Wang Lin left the cave, he pushed his speed to the limit. He moved like a meteor as he moved forward while sticking close to the ground. The next morning, he arrived at the ancient cave, where he got his nascent soul. After carefully looking around, Wang Lin spread out his divine sense to make sure there was no one inside. He slapped his bag of holding, and the black poison sword flew out. Under Wang Lin's command, the black poison sword charged into the rubble. Soon, a tunnel was dug out by the flying sword. After the flying sword dug out the tunnel, Wang Lin looked around and thought, "Sea of Devils, goodbye." He suddenly turned around and entered the tunnel. Inside the tunnel, he found a stone room with the transfer array. Wang Lin didn't enter. Instead, he turned around and waved his hand. Suddenly, the tunnel behind him collapsed again, sealing the entrance. Shortly after, he waved his hand and sent out several restrictions to completely cover the entrance. Then, he turned around and walked into the stone room. This stone room also collapsed, but when Wang Lin left, he secretly placed a restriction on it to protect it. Therefore, although this place collapsed, it didn't damage the transfer array. After carefully cleaning up the rubble in the stone room, Wang Lin stood on top of the transfer array and studied it for a while. Finally, he took out a dark purple diamond-shaped stone. This stone was crystal clear and seemed to contain clouds that were slowly floating inside. This stone was the very rare top-quality spirit stone in the Sea of Devils. It was also the source of spiritual energy to activate the transfer array. After hesitating for a bit, Wang Lin's eyes revealed a decisive look. He no longer hesitated and quickly inserted the spirit stone into a slot in the transfer array. Then, his eyes lit up as he stared at the transfer array. The top-quality spirit stone in the card slot suddenly shined brightly, and the mist inside began to tumble. Then, a purple thread slowly spread out from the card slot and quickly flowed along the path of the formation. In the blink of an eye, the entire formation was covered by the purple thread. Slowly, a series of rumbling sounds could be heard. Shortly after, a ring of light appeared at the edge of the formation and slowly rose. Then more rings of light rose from the formation. These rings of light intertwined with each other and began to rotate faster and faster. When they reached a certain speed, Wang Lin's body suddenly became blurry and then disappeared. After Wang Lin disappeared, the rings of light slowly returned to the transfer array. The transfer array calmed down and returned to normal. At a mountain range millions of kilometers away from the Sea of Devils, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. Shortly after, a pillar of light that was more than 100 feet thick descended from the sky. A series of rumbling sounds came from the pillar of light. In this mountain range, there was a valley. The valley wasn't big, and there was an ancient transfer array on the ground. At this moment, the valley was filled with dust, and it was impossible to see anything more than 10 feet away. As the dust settled, a black figure slowly walked out from the transfer array. This person had a head of white hair, and his body was covered in dust. He looked to be in a sorry state. He was Wang Lin. Wang Lin coughed a few times. His right hand formed a seal, and spiritual energy surged out. A gust of wind appeared, and soon, a clean area was cleared. The dust on his body was also swept away. Wang Lin raised his head and looked around. The bright sunlight shined down from the sky and caused Wang Lin's vision to darken a bit. The moment Wang Lin saw his surroundings, he knew that he had left the Sea of Devils. The surrounding mountains were covered in trees, and there were birds he had never seen before flying around in the sky. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. He hadn't seen such bright sunlight in a long time. The Sea of Devils didn't see the sun all year round. Even in the past month, although the fog had dissipated, the sky was still covered in dark clouds and black rain. After taking a deep breath, Wang Lin turned around and stared at the transfer array on the ground. His eyes lit up as he slapped his bag of holding and took out a flying sword. He cut the transfer array a few times and dug out a few materials for the transfer array. Only after putting the materials into his bag of holding did he relax. Now, even if the crazy old man found him, he wouldn't be able to use the transfer array to get here. Also, without the Lotus restriction, Wang Lin's safety was guaranteed. Wang Lin jumped into the air. When he was in the air, he noticed that the spiritual energy here was very dense. The higher he went, the denser the spiritual energy became. In midair, he waved his hands in front of him, creating an afterimage restriction. After imprinting in the valley, he immediately flew away without looking back. As Wang Lin flew, he spread out his divine sense and carefully scanned his surroundings. He didn't know where he was, but the most important thing right now was to find out where he was. Then, if the conditions allowed, Wang Lin would begin the plan he had in mind to solve his cultivation breakthrough. This was a very time-consuming plan. Before this, he needed to arrange a lot of things to make sure this plan would work. Destroying his cultivation meant that he would have to start all over again. This was not a choice Wang Lin wanted to make. If he didn't destroy his cultivation, he wouldn't be able to break through. He would be stuck at the late stage of core formation, and there would be no hope of getting revenge. How could he cultivate to the nascent soul stage without losing his cultivation? There was only one way that he could do both of these things. There were too few votes. He didn't have much motivation. His body had exploded in power for the past 3 or 4 days, but all he got in return was less than 20 votes. Disappointed, he went to sleep. That's all for today. Chapter 2:10. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. His divine sense spread out, and his body moved very fast. As he flew, he scanned his surroundings. Suddenly, his body came to a stop, and he looked to the north. 2,000 kilometers north of where he was, he could sense 2 cultivators speeding east. These 2 cultivators were both male. One of them was very young and was at the early stage of foundation establishment. The other was middle-aged and was at the core formation stage. After Wang Lin looked at them, he suddenly moved like lightning toward the 2 of them. As a disciple of the Hao Ran sect, Mai Guorong obeyed his master's orders and went to the Cloud Sky sect to attend the biennial Spirit Opening Conference. The Spirit Opening Conference was actually a special pill auction of the Cloud Sky sect. The Cloud Sky sect was famous for their alchemy. Even some rank 4 cultivation countries would come to buy pills from them. However, that was usually during the opening spirit gathering that happened once every 10 years. As for the small opening spirit gathering that happened once every 2 years, it was usually only for the lower-level disciples of the sects in Chu. It was considered a small training experience. A small-scale spirit opening gathering like this wouldn't have any overly precious pills. Most of the time, they would only be some standard pills. However, to the lower-level disciples, these pills were things that they couldn't ask for too much. It has to be said that any pill made by the Cloud Sky sect would have a higher effect than other pills. As a result, any pill made by the Cloud Sky sect had a certain value and was very popular. As for the Cloud Sky sect, aside from these kinds of spirit opening gatherings, they refused to do anything else. So even though this was only a small spirit opening gathering that was only held once every 2 years, all of the sects in Chu sent a large amount of their disciples to participate. Mai Guorong was very proud that he was able to stand out from the crowd of disciples and participate in this spirit opening meeting. However, he knew that the reason he was able to participate was because he had a good teacher. Thinking about this, Mai Guorong's gaze fell on the middle-aged man before him. This person looked very ordinary. His face was sallow, and he looked like he could die at any moment. But Mai Guorong didn't dare to underestimate him. He was filled with respect. Ignoring the fact that this person was his teacher, just the fact that this person was at the early stage of core formation made Mai Guorong feel that his luck was very good. It has to be said that being taken in as a disciple by a core formation cultivator was rare even in the Hao Ran sect. This meant that Mai Guorong had become an inner disciple. Although it was still a bit different from being a core disciple, if Mai Guorong could reach the late stage of foundation establishment, he would naturally become a core disciple. In addition to this, what made him respect his teacher even more was that his teacher was one of the few alchemy grandmasters in the Hao Ran sect. Although the pills his teacher made couldn't compare to the Cloud Sky sects, the difference wasn't big. Because of that, Mai Guorong's status in the righteous noble sect immediately rose. As the saying goes, when the tide rises, the boat rises. Even Mai Guorong felt like he was a cut above the rest of the inner sect disciples. Calm your mind and control your sword. Don't be distracted. This place is very close to the Cloud Sky sect. Don't ruin the reputation of the Hao Ran sect. A hoarse voice interrupted Mai Guorong's thoughts. He quickly nodded and stopped thinking about random things. He followed closely behind the teacher. After a while, Mai Guorong looked at his teacher. As he flew, he curiously asked, "Teacher, the Cloud Sky sect, quiet." Before he could finish speaking, he saw the middle-aged man's expression suddenly change. He suddenly stopped and turned around. He stared behind him, frowned, and shouted. Mai Guorong was startled. He quickly stopped and looked back. There was nothing strange about the blue sky and white clouds. His heart was filled with doubt, but just at this moment, a rumbling sound came from the distance. The clouds in the distance were pushed by a powerful force and slowly moved forward. At first glance, It looked like the clouds had turned into waves and were moving forward. My Guorong's expression suddenly changed. His eyes revealed a look of terror. At the same time, a black figure charged toward them at an extremely fast speed. In just a few breaths' time, the figure was already close to them. My Guorong could clearly see that this person was wearing a black robe. His face was cold and his white hair flowed behind him. He gave off a very demonic feeling. In my Guorong's eyes, this person's cultivation was as unfathomable as the ocean. This was especially true for this person's eyes, which were filled with endless coldness. There was even a hint of fear in them that would make one's heart jump. My Guorong quickly lowered his head. His face was pale and his body felt cold. What a heavy killing intent. My Guorong's master, the righteous noble sect's grandmaster alchemist, Su Li's pupils constricted involuntarily. With his divine sense, he could immediately sense that this person's cultivation base far surpassed his own. Furthermore, the divine sense that this person was emitting was even more shocking. From his point of view, even though this person hadn't reached the nascent soul stage, the feeling he got was exactly the same as when he met other nascent soul cultivators in the sect. As a result, he didn't dare to underestimate this person. In his view, even the nascent soul cultivators of the Hao Ran sect didn't have the same killing intent as this person. Su Li had spent his entire life studying the art of alchemy, so he was extremely sensitive to the fluctuations of spiritual energy. He could almost imagine that the hands of a person who possessed such a baleful aura would definitely be incomparably bloodthirsty. Facing such a person, if he was not careful, he would definitely cause a great disaster. Thinking about this, he quickly clasped his hands and said, "Fellow cultivator, I am Su Li of the Hao Ran sect. This is my disciple. Why have you come in such a hurry? If I can help, I definitely won't shirk my responsibility." This white-haired young man was Wang Lin. He looked at the two of them, and his gaze fell on Su Li. He clasped his hands and said, "Fellow cultivator, may I know which cultivation country this is?" Su Li was startled. He looked at Wang Lin and said, "This is the country of Chu. This place is the Chu country. I wonder where you are from?" Country of Chu. Wang Lin pondered for a bit. He didn't answer the other person's question and instead slapped his bag of holding. His action caused Su Li's expression to change greatly. He pulled his disciple, my Guorong, back up a few steps and revealed a cautious expression. Wang Lin looked at him and waved his hand. A piece of jade appeared in his hand. He placed the jade on his forehead and a map appeared in his mind. This jade was the map he got from Zhou Zihong of the War God Shrine. It contained information about the country of Ho Fun. The moment he heard the two words, Chu country, he immediately thought of where he had seen the description of this place. Now that he checked the jade slip, he immediately knew his approximate location. The country of Chu was north of Ho Fun, east of Xianwu, and even bordered by the Sea of Devils. In addition, there was the Shattered Stone Mountain Range. It could be said that the country of Chu was next to the Shattered Stone Mountain Range. According to the jade, the country of Chu was very large and had a lot of cultivators. As a rank 3 cultivation country, the country of Chu was at the peak of rank 3 and could break through at any time to become a rank 4 cultivation country. All of this was because there were more than 10 late-stage nascent soul cultivators in the country of Chu. This was a huge force for the country of Chu to become a rank 4 cultivation country. As long as one of them could break through to the soul formation stage, then the entire Chu country would immediately become a rank 4 cultivation country. This was why the cultivators of Hofen chose to invade the country of Xianwu instead of the country of Chu. After all, compared to Chu, Xianwu was the best choice for the cultivators of Hofen. In the jade, there was a record of some of the sects in Chu. Wang Lin looked at it for a while before putting it away. He looked at Su Li and asked, "Fellow cultivator, where is this place in Chu?" Su Li's left hand was on his bag of holding, and he was secretly on guard. When he heard Wang Lin's question, he pondered a bit and slowly said, "This is the Cloud Sky Mountain Range." Wang Lin nodded. He looked around before staring straight ahead and calmly said, "So, if we go 10,000 kilometers from here, at the top of the Cloud Sky Mountain Range, is the Cloud Sky sect?" Su Li's eyes lit up and he cautiously asked, Do you have a relationship with the Cloud Sky sect? Wang Lin let out a smile that wasn't a smile. He looked at Su Li and clasped his hands. Thank you. Goodbye. With that, Wang Lin's body suddenly moved. He turned into a ray of light and disappeared without a trace. It wasn't until Wang Lin left that Su Li let out a sigh of relief. His back was soaked in sweat. When the wind blew by, it felt cold. The pressure that Wang Lin gave him was too great. If it wasn't for the fact that Su Li spent a lot of time practicing alchemy, his cultivation level was extremely stable, and his mind was several times calmer than a normal cultivator's. Otherwise, when he was facing off against Wang Lin, he would have been at a loss. He took a deep breath and turned around to look at his disciple. My Guorong's eyes were still filled with fear as he looked at where Wang Lin disappeared to. His voice trembled as he said, Master, what exactly is that person's cultivation level? Is he a nascent soul cultivator? Su Li shook his head and said, that person is filled with killing intent. If I'm not wrong, I'm afraid he is someone who escaped from the Sea of Devils. These kinds of people are common in Shu, but this is the first time I've seen someone with this kind of killing intent. Killing intent? My Guorong was startled. Su Li slowly said, every time you kill someone, you can accumulate a bit of killing intent. When the killing intent reaches a certain level, it can turn into killing intent. For some cultivators, this killing intent is a good material for refining treasures. After accumulating evil energy for a long time, it can transform into evil energy. This person's evil energy is monstrous. He didn't use any techniques, but just the evil energy emitted from his body is enough to cause fear in people's hearts. I wonder if this person knows how to use the evil energy in his body. If he does, then even nascent soul cultivators will be affected and hallucinated. Su Li's tone was low as he slowly spoke. My Guorong took a deep breath and hesitated. He asked, Master, according to you, this person hasn't reached the nascent soul stage? Su Li pondered a little, then nodded his head and said, even if he hasn't reached the nascent soul stage, he is not far from breaking through. If I wasn't wrong, then I'm afraid this person has already reached the peak of the late stage of core formation. Okay, don't mention this to anyone else in order to avoid unnecessary trouble. Even when you return to the Hao Ran sect, don't casually talk about it. Do you understand? My Guorong quickly nodded. Even if Su Li didn't tell him to, he wouldn't talk about it. After all, the feeling this person gave him was too terrifying. He didn't want to cause any unnecessary trouble. As for Wang Lin, after confirming his location, he flew very fast. After flying for a long time, his divine sense detected the fluctuations of spiritual energy in front of him. According to the map, the Cloud Sky sect was in front of him. Wang Lin secretly nodded his head. He knew that the master and disciple from before weren't lying. After confirming his location, Wang Lin pondered a little. Since the Cloud Sky sect was here, Wang Lin decided to stop flying and instead go into closed-door cultivation near the Cloud Sky sect. After looking at the Cloud Sky sect in the distance, he turned around and flew away without a word. On a cliff about 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers away from the Cloud Sky sect, Wang Lin landed. He looked around and revealed a satisfied expression. Then he waved his hand, and a flying sword flew out from his bag of holding. The flying sword flew into the middle of the cliff and cut into a stone wall. Soon, a cave appeared on the cliff. According to Wang Lin's habits, the cave had 2 stone rooms. Wang Lin entered the cave and looked around. After thinking for a bit, he opened up another stone room. After doing all of this, his body floated out. His right hand slapped his bag of holding and the restriction flag flew out. Wang Lin's hand formed a seal and pointed at the restriction flag. Suddenly, the restriction flag began to move without any wind and quickly grew. In the blink of an eye, it had grown more than 10 times its original size. Then, Wang Lin's hand formed seals and shot out rays of spiritual energy. The restriction flag began to expand until it became a black curtain that could cover the sky. At this moment, Wang Lin's eyes were calm as he shouted, "Scatter!" As soon as he finished speaking, the black screen began to tremble. One by one, the restrictions fell from the black screen and sank into the cliff. In the end, over 1,000 restrictions appeared from the black screen. In the blink of an eye, the entire cliff was densely packed with restrictions. Wang Lin took a deep breath. He waved his right hand, and the restriction flag shrunk. Wang Lin threw it, and it pierced deep into the cliff. At this moment, from the outside, the cave in the middle of the cliff had already disappeared. There was nothing special about it. The entire cliff looked very normal, and there was nothing special about it. Wang Lin pondered for a bit and waved his hand again. He sent out several restrictions that landed around the cliff. Finally, the restrictions formed a tight barrier around the cliff. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. He took a step forward, and as soon as he touched the cliff, he vanished. When he reappeared, he was already in his immortal's cave. Inside, he rubbed his bag of holding, and something appeared in his hand. This was the green dragon jade that Li Muin had given him. Although there were some cracks on it, it didn't affect its use. After Wang Lin looked at the jade for a while, he sent out a seal. Suddenly, a dragon roar came from the jade and a green dragon came out. After circling Wang Lin a few times, it grew larger and larger until it turned into a giant green dragon. The green dragon circled around Wang Lin, and the walls seemed to become transparent, so they weren't able to stop it at all. The azure dragon let out another roar and entered the top of the cave, becoming one with the cliff to form a protective barrier. This cave could be said to be the most secure place that Wang Lin had set up so far. Wang Lin had spent a lot of effort on the defenses of this cave. The reason was that if nothing unexpected happened, he would be living here for a very long time. Wang Lin stood in the cave and thought for a long time. His eyes filled with determination. Then he pointed at his forehead, and his sea of consciousness fluctuated. Immediately, the devil Su Ligua and the second devil appeared. After the two devils appeared, their reactions were different. The moment the second devil appeared, it looked at Wang Lin with a look of fanaticism and respect. Right now, as long as Wang Lin gave the order, even if it was to devour a soul formation cultivator, it would rush forward without hesitation, even if it meant death. After the devil Su Ligua appeared, it immediately looked around. At the same time, it put on a respectful expression and bowed to Wang Lin with a flattering smile. Wang Lin pointed at a stone room and said, "From today onwards, you two devils will cultivate in this stone room. Without my permission, you're not allowed to take one step out of this stone room. Otherwise, you will be destroyed." Su Ligua was startled. Just as he was about to speak, the second devil didn't hesitate and quickly floated into the stone room that Wang Lin pointed at. Su Ligua hesitated for a moment and quickly swallowed his words. He thought that since the second devil was so straightforward, if he didn't say anything, he would lose to the second devil. Thus, he quickly followed behind the second devil and entered the stone room. After the two devils entered, Wang Lin's G-Realm Divine Sense suddenly moved and swept the stone room. After searching for some divine sense, he withdrew it. If the two devils didn't listen and try to fly out, they would definitely be attacked by the G-Realm Divine Sense. Wang Lin had no choice but to be cautious. After all, these two devils were refined by him. Normally, he wouldn't be worried about any accidents, but what he was about to do next was not to allow any accidents. Thus, he trapped the two devils. After doing all this, Wang Lin was silent for a moment. Then he quietly walked into the stone room in the center and sat down cross-legged. He took a deep breath and pointed at his forehead. Immediately, a seven-colored ball slowly floated out of his forehead. This ball gradually solidified and finally revealed the appearance of the heaven-defying bead. After silently looking at the heaven-defying bead for a while, Wang Lin waved his right hand and the heaven-defying bead immediately floated to the side. Then, Wang Lin took out a few jade bottles from his storage bag and placed them on his left and right side. Then he quietly closed his eyes and began to meditate. Time quickly passed. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. During this year, aside from collecting the spiritual liquid every day, Wang Lin's body didn't move at all. This time, while he was meditating, Wang Lin continuously compressed the excess spiritual force in his body. Finally, it turned into 3 vortexes. Within the vortexes, there was a thin red thread of heaven's retribution. This time, the thread of heaven's retribution was completely suppressed by him. However, Wang Lin didn't dare to relax at all. Although this thread was small, It came from the power of heaven's retribution. If he didn't handle it well, the result would be that his body would be destroyed by this thread. Although his body had been reconstructed once, Wang Lin didn't want to test it with his own body. Aside from this, Wang Lin spent the rest of his time slowly pondering a technique. This was an unorthodox method to solve the problem of his stagnant cultivation. Even now, Wang Lin still clearly remembered the divine path technique he saw on the back mountain of the war god temple. It was carved by the ancestor of the war god temple, Chun Chong, from his memory. Back then, he had spent a great deal of effort to finally understand this technique, and he had even figured out the divine power of this technique. This technique was a technique that contained great divine power, and the clone obtained by cultivating this technique was completely a real body. Relying on the avatar to cultivate at the same time could increase the speed of cultivation. At the moment of forming the nascent soul, the avatar and the avatar would become one, increasing the power of forming the nascent soul. However, this technique was incomplete, and the avatar that was cultivated had a fatal flaw. The avatar would form a body, but after it appeared, it wouldn't have any cultivation and its lifespan would be less than 30 years. The reason why Wang Lin didn't choose this method back then was because he didn't have a lot of spirit herbs. He didn't even have enough for himself, so how could he give it to his avatar? But now, from this technique, Wang Lin saw a way for him to break through to the nascent soul stage without losing his cultivation. He could cultivate an avatar and reach the nascent soul stage in 30 years. Then, he could fuse with the avatar. This way, he would be able to bypass his bottleneck of reaching the late stage of core formation. This way, he wouldn't have to lose his cultivation and he would have the opportunity to break through. However, there was one difficult point, and that was how to make his avatar reach the nascent soul stage in 30 years. With the help of the heaven-defying bead space, 30 years of time could be extended by a lot. According to the usual analysis, if he was in the heaven-defying bead space, Wang Lin could get close to 300 years of time, which was 180 years of time. But there was still a very important problem, and that was the pill. This problem would be solved in the Cloud Sky sect. This was also the reason why Wang Lin decided to go in a closed-door cultivation here, when he found out that he was in the Chu Garden and that he was not far from the Cloud Sky sect. Wang Lin's eyes were calm. On the ground in front of him, there were 3 white jade bottles. They were filled with the spirit liquid that dripped from the heaven-defying bead in the past year. This was also the first gift he prepared for his avatar. After pondering for a while, Wang Lin's eyes flashed with decisiveness. He took a deep breath, formed a seal with both hands, and slowly closed his eyes. He began to cultivate the avatar according to the requirements of the technique. If one could see through this divine path technique, then it would not be very difficult to cultivate it. It had nothing to do with one's aptitude. Otherwise, Chun Chong of the War God Temple, who could be said to be the person with the worst aptitude in the War God Temple, was the only person after his master to see through this divine path technique and record it down. My complaints yesterday caused some of my friends to be unhappy. I apologize for that. Chapter 211. Rosefinch lived in the Sure Sand for 12,500 years. In the rank 3 cultivation country of Chu, a red light appeared. It lasted for 3 days before disappearing. All the sects in Chu sent their disciples to investigate, but they found nothing. They only found an abandoned cave. There was a rumor that a great treasure had appeared there and had already been taken by someone. Some of the cultivators didn't believe this rumor, but there were some that believed it. The place where the red light appeared was less than 10,000 kilometers from the Cloud Sky sect. As a result, the rumor that a great treasure had been taken by the Cloud Sky sect began to spread. In the same year, the Cloud Sky sect refined a heaven-damage pill. This pill was an early-stage rank 5 pill. It could allow a nascent soul cultivator's body to recover immediately. There was no need to possess someone else to be reborn. The moment this pill appeared, the already famous Cloud Sky sect became even more famous. All of the surrounding rank 3 cultivation countries were shocked. In the end, the giant demon clan of the rank 4 cultivation country made a secret agreement to get the pill. Before they left, they placed a formation on the Cloud Sky sect. This formation was very powerful. Even a normal rank 4 cultivation country would have a hard time breaking through it. At the end of the same year, the Cloud Sky sect opened its doors. The 10-day recruitment ceremony that happens once every 30 years began. All of the cultivation families in Chu sent their direct descendants to the Cloud Sky sect in hopes that they could become a member of the Cloud Sky sect and bring honor to their ancestors. However, the Cloud Sky sect's requirements for accepting disciples were very strange. Unlike other sects, the Cloud Sky sect's requirements for accepting disciples were based on luck. As a result, the recruitment ceremony that happens once every 30 years would only accept 10 people at most. Compared to the thousands of people that come every time, it was really insignificant. The Cloud Sky sect's fame and the fact that they accepted so few disciples made it so that almost every rogue cultivator dreamed of becoming a disciple of the Cloud Sky sect. At the top of the Cloud Sky mountain range, there were rows of beautiful pavilions with a celestial atmosphere. This was where the Cloud Sky sect was located. In truth, this was only a small part of the Cloud Sky sect. Most of the buildings were hidden by a spell. From afar, aside from the lush green trees, there was nothing else. The 3 huge cyan characters were like a string of lanterns hanging high up in the sky. They were controlled by some kind of magical power and floated motionlessly in the air above the carving tower. These 3 words were Cloud Sky sect. Every 30 years, when the 10-day apprenticeship ceremony began, the 3 large words would appear in the sky. Once the 10-day period was over, the 3 large words would disappear. As a result, all of the rogue cultivators and cultivation families in Chu knew that as long as the 3 words Cloud Sky sect appeared in the sky, it meant that the recruitment ceremony had begun. The Cloud Sky sect would be accepting disciples in Chu. Once the 3 words disappeared, it meant that he had accepted her as his disciple. It was over. Early this morning, there were no clouds in the sky. Rays of sword energy flew from all directions toward the Cloud Sky sect. When they were 500 kilometers away from the Cloud Sky sect, the rays of sword energy landed, revealing many handsome men and women. None of them were very old. Some of them came on their own, while others came with their elders. In order to show their respect to the Cloud Sky sect, all of the people who wanted to join the Cloud Sky sect didn't fly anymore. Instead, they walked on foot. If one were to look down from the sky, they would clearly see that within 500 kilometers of the Cloud Sky sect, there were countless men and women walking in 2s and 3s. Outside the gate of the Cloud Sky sect stood 3 young cultivators. They were responsible for arranging the people who came to join the Cloud Sky sect. At this moment, 500 kilometers away from the Cloud Sky sect, 2 cultivators, 1 male and 1 female, were walking forward. The male was about 27 or 28 years old. He was calm, and his eyes were calm. There was a purple sword embroidered on his robe, indicating that he was already an inner disciple of the Sword Chi sect. Beside him was a young girl in her 20s. She wore a purple dress, and a ribbon of the same color was tied around her waist. Her figure was curvaceous, and she gave off a lovey-dovey feeling. Looking up, this girl's appearance was very attractive. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was beautiful enough to shame the moon and the flowers. At this moment, the girl pouted. She rubbed her legs and angrily said, "Big brother, what's so good about the Cloud Sky sect? Why did Juan want me to come here? I don't like alchemy. I like the Sword Chi sect." The man's expression was normal. He looked at the girl, pointed at her forehead, and smiled. "The Sword Chi sect is too murderous and not suitable for you. It has to be said that the Cloud Sky sect is the leader of all the sects in Chu. Even if the country of Chu were to face a disaster, it wouldn't affect the Cloud Sky sect at all. If you can enter the Cloud Sky sect, I'll be completely relieved. I believe that if your parents were still alive, they would be smiling in the underworld." When the girl heard her brother mention her parents, her expression darkened. After pondering for a while, she obediently nodded. She looked at her brother and said, "Big brother, if I can enter the Cloud Sky sect, I'll only refine pills for you. What do you think? When your cultivation level is high enough, we can go back to the family and show those old fellows. Big brother, you can teach them a good lesson." When the man heard this, he turned around and his eyes became cold. He was afraid that his sister wouldn't be able to handle the shock, so he didn't tell her the truth about what happened back then. Big brother, look at that person. His clothes are so strange. The girl's eyes were wide open as she looked at the youth in front of her. The man raised his head and saw a young man dressed in coarse clothes walking forward slowly 2,000 feet in front of him. It has to be said that the people who came to the Cloud Sky sect to become a disciple were usually rogue cultivators or cultivator families. No mortals could come here. Therefore, it was very rare to see someone dressed like this. This was clearly the clothing of a normal mountain village youth. As if he heard the girl's voice, the youth turned around to look at the two of them. He didn't stop for a second before withdrawing his gaze and continuing to walk forward. A hint of surprise appeared in the man's eyes. He knew that his sister's appearance was very attractive. Along the way, all the cultivators looked at her. This was especially true after they entered the 500-kilometer area of the Cloud Sky sect. Anyone who saw his sister would take a few extra glances, but only this youth's eyes were as calm as water. When he saw his sister, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. The man scanned the youth with his divine sense. This youth's cultivation level was only at the second or third layer of chi condensation. After taking one look, he withdrew his gaze. The girl looked at the youth with interest. She quickly walked over and shouted, "Hey, are you also here to become a disciple?" The youth frowned. He ignored her and continued to walk forward. The girl let out a snort. She gently jumped over the youth and landed before him. She said with dissatisfaction, "Are you mute? Let me ask you, are you also here to become a disciple?" The youth looked at the girl and helplessly said, "Isn't that nonsense?" With that, he shook his head and walked past the girl. The girl's face turned red. She thought about it and realized that what she said was indeed nonsense. He was already here, yet she still asked if he was here to become a disciple. The girl's brother let out a smile. He wasn't unhappy with the youth's answer. In fact, when his sister asked the question, he had the same feeling. The girl stomped her foot and caught up to the youth again. She discontentedly said, "Of course I wasn't talking nonsense. The clothes you're wearing don't look like you're here to become a disciple. Look at everyone else. Look at everyone else. Who else is like you? You have to know that the Cloud Sky sect accepts disciples." The youth frowned again. He secretly sighed. From his point of view, this girl was just a silly girl, and a very annoying one at that. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation level was too low, he would have waved his sleeves and left a long time ago. Time quickly passed. In the blink of an eye, it was already afternoon. The sun in the sky was getting hotter and hotter. Sweat appeared on the youth's forehead. He bitterly smiled. He hadn't felt like a mortal in a long time. At this moment, the young girl beside him flipped her right hand and took out a few lychees from her bag of holding. She opened them and placed them in her mouth. She looked at the young man and extended her right hand. "Do you want to eat them?" The youth didn't even look at her. He shook his head and continued to walk forward. The girl let out a snort and ignored him. She returned to her brother and placed all the lychees in his hand. 2 hours later, the Cloud Sky sect was right in front of them. The youth's eyes revealed a hint of regret. Looking at the magnificent pavilion, he couldn't help but think of the Hongyu sect. This youth was Wang Lin. To be more accurate, it was Wang Lin's avatar. To cultivate the god's path, he created an avatar from his body. This avatar was like his original body. It had flesh and blood. However, it could only live for 30 years. This was the only method he could think of that would allow him to break through without losing his G realm. As for his original body, it was hidden somewhere near the Cloud Sky sect. The cave from back then had been abandoned by him. The reason was that when the avatar appeared, there was a strange phenomenon. There was a burst of light that lingered for a long time. As a result, he had to quickly give up the cave and find a new place to start his long-term, closed-door training. His original body went into closed-door training while his avatar stayed at the foot of the Cloud Sky sect for a few months. After the Cloud Sky sect accepted disciples, Wang Lin decided to give it a try. That's why the scene before him happened. Originally, Wang Lin's plan was to capture a disciple of the Cloud Sky sect after he used up most of the spirit liquid and sneak in to steal the spirit liquid. Since the Cloud Sky sect was accepting disciples, Wang Lin decided to give it a try. If he could successfully become a disciple, then he wouldn't need to capture someone to sneak in. Anyone who came to the Cloud Sky sect and wanted to become a disciple will be taken to a side room in the outer mountains to rest. After 10 days, all the cultivators that came to the Cloud Sky sect would be screened. The girl that came with Wang Lin was taken into the sect by a disciple of the Cloud Sky sect. Her brother turned around and left, but before he left, he looked at Wang Lin a few times. Wang Lin's eyes were calm. Although his cultivation was gone, his experience was still there. From what he could see, this youth's cultivation was definitely not at the core formation stage. At most, he was at the late stage of foundation establishment. If Wang Lin's original body wanted to kill this kind of cultivator, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. After living in the Cloud Sky sect for a few days, the 3 big words in the sky slowly disappeared without a trace. At this point, the Cloud Sky sect's disciple acceptance ceremony had come to an end. The next step was to pick at most 10 disciples from all the people that came to the Cloud Sky sect to become a disciple. The rest were all sent away from the Cloud Sky sect. On this day, on a large platform at the foot of the Cloud Sky sect's mountain, thousands of disciples were sitting cross-legged, waiting for the test. Among these people, there were men and women, old and young. The highest cultivation level was at the core formation stage, and the lowest was similar to Wang Lin, at the 2nd or 3rd layer of qi condensation. Around the platform stood dozens of Cloud Sky sect disciples wearing white robes. Their faces were filled with indifference and pride. After all, they were already members of the Cloud Sky sect, so their status was naturally a level higher than those who wanted to become a disciple of the Cloud Sky sect. Not long after, a middle-aged man wearing a white robe with 3 pill cauldrons embroidered on his sleeve slowly floated down from the Cloud Sky sect. As he floated in the air, he looked down at everyone and said, in a low voice, "Once you enter the Cloud Sky sect, your status will be lowered by 10 ranks. If you don't want to, then leave now." After he finished speaking, none of the thousands of people on the platform left. They all raised their heads and looked at him with determination in their eyes. Among these people, there were a few core formation cultivators. They knew that the middle-aged man's words were meant for them to hear. After waiting for a while, the middle-aged man waved his right hand and a force came from the stone platform. All of the disciples that wanted to become a disciple were pushed back a few steps, revealing a large empty space that was more than 100 feet wide. At the same time, a pillar of black mist suddenly rose up from the empty space. Clouds churned inside the pillar, making it look very spectacular. This thick pillar of black mist was like an arm that supported the heavens and earth. After it rose up from the ground, it extended into the sky. From the bottom up, it was impossible to see where it ended. Everyone, no matter what method you use, as long as you can feel what is inside the pillar, then you pass. The time limit is 12 hours. The middle-aged man's voice slowly came. After he finished speaking, he landed on the side and silently looked at the pillar of black mist. Wang Lin's expression was calm as he calmly stared at the pillar of black mist and began to ponder. Although he was only an avatar, and when he formed the avatar, he didn't leave any of his cultivation or divine sense inside the avatar. However, aside from his cultivation and divine sense, all of his techniques and ancient god memories were left inside the avatar. At this moment, Wang Lin's eyes lit up as he continued to analyze. Gradually, Wang Lin revealed a smile. From his point of view, this pillar was clearly some kind of restriction. The purpose of this restriction was to restrict anyone who wanted to see it. The Cloud Sky sect wanted to use this method to get rid of the disciples that wanted to become a disciple. However, Wang Lin still had one question. What was the main purpose of this restriction? In other words, what kind of disciple was the Cloud Sky sect trying to find with this restriction? According to Wang Lin's understanding of restrictions, the restriction in front of him was something that normal people couldn't break. As a result, out of the thousands of people on the stage, almost none of them would be able to see through it. If Wang Lin was able to see through it, then it would be too obvious that he was planning to hide his strength in the Cloud Sky sect. However, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that Wang Lin was worried that if he didn't completely understand what kind of disciple the Cloud Sky sect was trying to find, then if he used his own restriction to break the restriction, it would attract the attention of the Cloud Sky sect. At that time, it wouldn't be worth it. Therefore, Wang Lin didn't immediately break the restriction. Instead, he quietly waited. He didn't believe that the Cloud Sky sect would set up such a large formation just to gather all these people together and then announce that no one passed. If his analysis wasn't wrong, then it wouldn't be long before someone found the answer for him. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, 6 hours had passed. Some of the people on the stone platform could no longer sit still. They had already tried to probe with their divine senses, but whenever their divine senses touched the black fog, they would be immediately blocked by a force and bounce back. No matter what they did, they were unable to succeed. Finally, one of them suddenly slapped his bag of holding and took out a wooden carving. He muttered an incantation and immediately threw it into the pillar of black fog. The middle-aged man responsible for accepting disciples didn't say anything about this. He just quietly looked at the stone pillar. But Wang Lin carefully noticed that although the middle-aged man's expression was calm, a few of the surrounding Cloud Sky sect disciples revealed a strange expression. The moment the wood carving appeared, it immediately grew until it turned into a giant golden eagle. It let out a shrill cry and charged into the black fog. However, the moment the golden eagle touched the black fog, a large hand came out from the black fog, grabbed the golden eagle, and put it inside the black fog. The expression of the disciple that released the golden eagle immediately changed. He suddenly stood up, turned around, and said to the middle-aged man from the Cloud Sky sect, "Junior gives up. I hope Senior can return the magic treasure. This is Junior's family treasure, Senior." The middle-aged man looked at the disciple and slowly said, "The golden wood carving is a family treasure of the Gong Sun family. Naturally, the sect won't keep it. Since you have already given up, then when we leave, we will naturally return it to you." The disciple's expression immediately relaxed. His eyes revealed a look of gratitude as he walked off the stage. "I said before that you can use any method you can think of. As long as you can see what is inside, then you will pass." The middle-aged man emphasized once again. At this moment, a youth on the stage carefully asked, "But if I see it clearly and say it out loud, then wouldn't others know?" "That won't happen. If any of you can see through the fog, then you will naturally know the secret of this place," the middle-aged man replied with a smile. The moment the giant hand appeared in the depths of the black fog, Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He had been staring at the restriction the entire time. The moment the giant hand appeared, a crack appeared. With his divine sense, he was able to see several pills floating inside. Wang Lin's expression remained the same, but his heart trembled. He pondered a bit and didn't act rashly. At this moment, many of the people on the stage were getting impatient. They all took out magic treasures to try and break the black fog. As more and more disciples took out magic treasures, a giant hand would come out from the pillar and grab the magic treasures. If it wasn't for the middle-aged man, these people wouldn't have used magic treasures like this. However, since the Cloud Sky sect had said that if they gave up, they would return the magic treasures before leaving. As a result, no one had any more worries. At this moment, all kinds of magic treasures appeared in the sky. Wang Lin was able to clearly see what was going on inside the fog through the gaps created by the attacks of the treasures. After all, he had a divine sense that allowed him to see through restrictions. There were 11 pills, 11 pieces of jade, and 11 tokens with pill furnaces engraved on them. As for what these 3 items represented, Wang Lin didn't know. However, just at this moment, there was a flash of golden light from the black fog. Shortly after, there was a flash of golden light from within the black fog. The golden light circled around the black fog once before turning into a piece of jade. It quickly flew out and landed on the stone platform. It landed in the hands of a girl who didn't know what was happening. At this moment, the eyes of the middle-aged man from the Cloud Sky sect lit up. He arrived next to the girl and picked up the piece of jade. After looking at it, he smiled and said, "You passed." With that, he waved his hand, and a Cloud Sky sect disciple flew over. "Take her up the mountain." The middle-aged man faintly smiled at the girl. He waved his sleeves and returned to his original position to wait for the next person to pass. Even now, the girl's mind was still a blur. She was still in a daze as she was pulled up the mountain by the Cloud Sky sect disciple. Seeing that someone had passed, the people on the stone platform began to talk among themselves. The people from the Cloud Sky sect didn't care about this at all. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. He clearly saw that it wasn't the girl who saw through the black fog. It was the piece of jade that chose the girl. When a middle-aged man saw the piece of jade land in the girl's hands, he didn't immediately announce that she had passed. Instead, he picked up the piece of jade and looked at it before announcing it. Through this, Wang Lin determined that the middle-aged man was checking to see if the piece of jade had chosen the girl. From this, it could be seen that if he had acted rashly before, he would have been exposed. Wang Lin sneered in his heart. The Cloud Sky sect's disciple acceptance gift was indeed strange. Just at this moment, there was another flash of golden light from within the black fog. Wang Lin's eyes lit up, and he secretly formed a restriction with his right hand. With the spiritual energy in his body right now, he could only form a few simple restrictions. He wasn't able to form a restriction ring. But even so, the restrictions he knew were passed down from ancient times. They were far more powerful than normal cultivators. Reaching the nascent soul stage was going to happen very soon. I made everyone wait. According to the outline I made, I should be able to reach the nascent soul stage this month. There was also Li Muan. She would also have a role this month. Perhaps the people have changed, or perhaps the feeling is still there. In short, everyone will see it. Chapter 2:12. Adding on the fact that the Cloud Sky sect said that they could use any method, no one saw through Wang Lin's restriction. At the moment the restriction hit the pillar of black fog, Wang Lin could clearly feel a piece of jade glowing golden as it slowly flew out. Wang Lin's eyes lit up, and he placed the restriction on the piece of jade. The speed at which the piece of jade was flying out suddenly slowed down. At the same time, he placed another restriction. This time, the restriction landed on a pill inside the pillar. The pill flew out of the pillar, turned into a ray of golden light, and landed in the hands of a young man on the stone platform. The young man was stunned for a moment and then shouted in ecstasy, I passed. At this moment, the middle-aged man from the Cloud Sky sect's eyes widened. He stared at the pill and quickly arrived in front of the young man. Without a word, he reached out with his right hand and the pill flew into his hand. After carefully looking at it, he revealed a strange expression. He looked at the ecstatic disciple for a long time before slowly saying, "Congratulations, there is no need to compete anymore. You can directly become an inner disciple of the Cloud Sky sect. In a bit, you will go up the mountain to see the sect head, and he will arrange a master for you. Take this pill. This is a gift for your master after you become his disciple. Unfortunately, this pill is of the fire element. Otherwise, I would be your master." The disciple's eyes revealed a look of ecstasy. He quickly nodded and was very excited. Wang Lin's eyes were calm, but his heart was moved. He only saw three things inside the black mist: the pill, the piece of jade, and the token. It was clear that these three things had very different meanings. Obtaining the pill would directly make him a disciple. Obtaining the piece of jade would count as completing this trial. But what would happen after obtaining the token? Wang Lin pondered for a bit and didn't act rashly again. He was very careful. One time might be a coincidence, but if he used the restriction multiple times in a row, then once someone found out, it would all be for naught. Also, from the middle-aged man's expression, Wang Lin guessed that not many disciples received a pill during the disciple recruitment every 30 years. According to his analysis, most of the disciples only received a piece of jade. There's only 1 hour left. I can tell you right now that there are a total of 4 things inside the pillar. They're the piece of jade, the pill, the token, and the pill furnace. Out of the 4 items, those who obtain the piece of jade pass this trial. Those who obtain the pill will directly become an inner disciple. Apart from becoming an inner court disciple, the person who obtains the command token can bring the command token to the pill depository pavilion to exchange for a grade 3 spirit pill. If you obtain the pill furnace, then congratulations, you will become one of the few inner disciples of the Cloud Sky sect. But until now, in the more than 8,000 years since the Cloud Sky sect was founded, only 6 seniors have obtained a pill furnace. I hope that among you, there will be a 7th. Once you become the head disciple, you will be able to choose any pill you want, and you'll be able to learn the most advanced alchemy techniques. As soon as he said this, The youths on the platform who wanted to become his disciple all took a deep breath and looked at the black mist pillar. In their eyes, the pillar represented a lifetime of wealth. When Wang Lin heard this, he was startled. He only saw 3 items and didn't see the 4th item, the pill furnace. After pondering for a bit, Wang Lin didn't continue to observe. Instead, he placed down a restriction and took out a pill. With a flash of golden light, a blue pill flew out and Wang Lin grabbed it. It wasn't that Wang Lin couldn't choose the token, but with his personality, he didn't want to attract too much attention. If it wasn't for the fact that taking the pill would directly make him a disciple, he wouldn't have chosen the token. He would have chosen the jade instead. After noticing the color of the pill, the middle-aged man's eyes lit up. He walked up and took the pill from Wang Lin's hand. After looking at it, he looked at Wang Lin and smiled. "Are you willing to become my disciple?" Wang Lin's face was filled with fear, but within this fear, there was a hint of excitement. He quickly nodded. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Stand to the side with me. After this is over, I'll lead you up the mountain to see the sect leader." Wang Lin respectfully followed the middle-aged man to a corner of the platform. His expression was filled with awe and ecstasy, but in reality, he was sneering inside. When he saw the middle-aged man's disappointed expression when the first pill was of the fire attribute, he immediately analyzed the situation. After careful observation, he was able to roughly determine that the pill this person needed was of the water attribute. After all, if it was any other attribute, it would be compatible. However, the water attribute pill was completely different from the fire attribute pill. As a result, when Wang Lin used the restriction to draw out the pill, he purposely chose the water attribute pill. If his analysis was correct, then the middle-aged man would be too happy and lower his guard. He wouldn't look too deeply into why 2 pills appeared in a row. In the next 2 hours, 3 more people were chosen. One of them was the girl who had traveled with Wang Lin. She obtained a jade slip. The time was almost up. The middle-aged man looked up at the sky and was about to announce the result. However, at this moment, the black fog suddenly began to churn violently. Dark clouds appeared in the sky, and lightning would occasionally flash across the sky like silver snakes dancing in the sky. At the same time, a series of rumbling sounds came from the black fog pillar. A corner of a pill furnace the size of a small mountain appeared in the black fog. This pill cauldron was slightly purple in color, and there was a black dragon chained to it carved on it. The dragon's eyes were wide open, revealing a strong unwillingness. From afar, it looked as if it was about to roar out. At this moment, an invisible force spread out from the black fog pillar. All the disciples standing on the stone platform were pushed away and involuntarily moved back. Very soon, aside from the middle-aged man and Wang Lin, who had taken out a treasure to defend himself, there was only a skinny youth. The youth raised his head in confusion and stared at the pill furnace. He was momentarily speechless. Wang Lin's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the pill furnace in the black fog. With his divine sense, he could clearly see that there was a faint layer of black light covering the pill furnace. Every time the pill furnace moved a bit, the color would become a bit darker. Child furnace, this is the dragon furnace. The middle-aged man beside Wang Lin revealed a serious expression. However, at that moment, the cauldron suddenly trembled and no longer flew out. Instead, it slowly shrank back into the cauldron. At the same time, a golden medallion flashed out of the black fog and landed in the young man's hand. The middle-aged man let out a sigh. He would see this kind of scene several times every 30 years, but every time, the pill furnace was never able to escape the black fog. Send everyone else out of the cloud sky sect. Anyone who obtained an item, follow me up the mountain. After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he turned around and looked at Wang Lin. His right hand reached out and grabbed Wang Lin's belt. At the same time, he jumped up and arrived next to the only youth that had obtained a token. After grabbing the youth, he brought the 2 of them toward the top of the mountain. Behind him were 3 disciples of the Cloud Sky sect. They each grabbed one of the lucky disciples that passed the trial and flew toward the top of the mountain. Wang Lin continued to look around. As the middle-aged man got faster and faster, they got closer and closer to the top of the mountain. After passing through a water-like defensive formation, the scene in front of Wang Lin suddenly changed. The originally lush green mountain scenery suddenly changed and disappeared. What appeared in front of Wang Lin were magnificent buildings. These buildings were all made of jade. At first glance, even with Wang Lin's experience, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He secretly thought that the Cloud Sky sect was indeed rich. Although not all of the buildings in the Cloud Sky sect were made of jade, at least 80% of them were made of natural jade. In terms of value, if these jades were made into spirit stones or jades, they would be worth an unimaginable amount. At the same time, because there were a lot of jades here, it naturally created a celestial atmosphere. Just by smelling it, Wang Lin felt a very comfortable feeling come from his body. He analyzed it and found that if he cultivated here, then 1 day of cultivation would be equivalent to 3 days of cultivation. As Wang Lin sighed, he looked at the others and found that all of them were also stunned. Looking at the scene in the Cloud Sky sect, they all had strange expressions on their faces. After the middle-aged man passed through the water-like defensive formation, the Cloud Sky sect disciples released their arms. Those that were able to come to the Cloud Sky sect to become a disciple all had flying techniques. At this moment, they all followed the middle-aged man and quickly flew into the depths of the Cloud Sky sect. Their speed wasn't fast. Along the way, Wang Lin was once again startled. He saw a group of cranes coming from the distance. On top of the cranes sat several beautiful women. These women were all wearing colorful clothes, making them look like dancing butterflies. Anyone who saw them couldn't help but look at them. Brother Zhou Lin, are these the new disciples? As the group of cranes got close, one of the women sitting on top of the cranes asked. Her voice was as beautiful as a lark's. This woman was in her budding years. She was very attractive, had teeth that were like shells, and had a willow waist. She was definitely going to be a beauty. In particular, she had a small mole on the side of her mouth, which made her look very charming. The middle-aged man laughed and said, That's right. This time, there are a total of 6 people for the disciple ceremony. The woman's beautiful eyes scanned the group and revealed a charming expression. Finally, her gaze fell on the girl that was with Wang Lin. She smiled and said, What a beautiful little sister. If teacher sees her, she will definitely be accepted as a disciple. After the woman finished speaking, the other women on the cranes all looked over. After chatting for a bit, they all left with the cranes. I really can't write today. My head hurts. I haven't had a cold in 3 years, and I didn't expect to get one this time. This season in the Northeast is the coldest time of the year. The heating system only starts on October 15th, so these past few days have been very difficult. Right now, the temperature here at night has already reached -4 or 5 degrees. Last night, I went out and caught a cold. When I came back, I had a high fever. Today, the fever has subsided, but my head hurts very badly. I'm really sorry to everyone. It's not that Jin doesn't want to update, but as I write, my mind is in a mess. In fact, I shouldn't have posted this chapter today because I haven't thought about it at all. I've been typing in a daze. It might not be satisfactory, so please don't worry. If I'm in a better state tomorrow, I'll make up for today's mistakes. There's also a reminder ticket. Please don't vote for it. Jin is a little afraid of this reminder ticket. In the future, I won't speed up for Gong. If that's the case, not only will the quality not be guaranteed, but it will also be very tiring to write, especially 12,000 words. For Jin, if he wants to update, he will have to sleep for 3 to 4 hours a day to write. Jin can finish 6,000 words. If he's in a good state, he can occasionally write 9,000 words. But 10,000 words is too difficult. Although there are many words, you don't have to spend money to read them. The word count for this chapter is 3,095. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.